Chapter 539. Tai Ta enters the party. There is no need for Lord Xiao to be so courteous. This one is Changyang Xiongtian. I came here today to discuss business with the House of Xiao. Jian Chen spoke in a moderate manner. However, when the name Changyang Xiongtian was heard, everyone from the Xiao family was stunned. Staring in disbelief at the young but handsome face of Jian Chen, their eyes simply couldn't believe it. If this one may ask, are you possibly the very same Changyang Xiongtian as the fourth master of the Changyang clan? The head of the Xiao family's voice trembled as he inquired. The name Changyang Xiongtian was equivalent to a clap of thunder to his ears. It was a very famous name in the Jesson kingdom. Not only was he a genius chosen by the heavens, he also became a heaven saint master just after entering his 20s, and he became an imperial protector for the kingdom, a position that even the king himself would not be able to outshine. That is indeed this one, Jian Chen declared. The faces of even the highest-ranking members of the Xiao family immediately changed. Bowing deeply to the ground, they called out, "We pay our respects to the imperial protector." At this, there were fluctuations to the voices of the men from their respect and admiration. For the imperial protector of the Jesson kingdom to suddenly appear within their home, it was a great honor to the House of Xiao. But what made them worried was that the imperial protector had come out of the blue, meaning that it was unknown whether he would bring fortune or misfortune. Respectful and honored imperial protector, please come and take a seat within our halls. Allow the Xiao family to play host to the best of our abilities. The head of the Xiao family respectfully but nervously spoke, "That won't be necessary. Lord Xiao, this one has come to deal with something that requires a discussion. After it is resolved, this one will be leaving." Jian Chen replied, "Whatever is the command of the honored imperial protector, our Xiao family will do our best to fulfill your endeavors. To accomplish such a task would be a great honor to my family. Even 10,000 deaths would not be enough to stop the entirety of the House of Xiao." The head fawned without even bothering to hide his attempt to curry favor. Previously, if one were to inquire which party was the strongest within the Jesson kingdom, it would without a doubt the Hua Yun sect besides the royal family. However, after the failed invasion of the Jesson kingdom by the Four Kingdoms, the situation had drastically changed. At the current moment, the Changyang clan held the title of the strongest, whereas the Hua Yun sect and the royal family couldn't even compare. Even if the 500,000-strong elite soldiers from the Qin Huang kingdom were to be excluded from the garrison troops at Lore City, the Changyang clan had far more heaven saint masters tucked away within it than the entirety of the Jesson kingdom at its golden age. The fact that a dozen or so heaven saint masters defeated the ones from the heavenly eagle kingdom was no secret either. It would be no exaggeration to say that the Changyang clan had already eclipsed the royal family as the strongest faction. Even the Hua Yun sect could not compare with its 3 heaven saint masters. From the Changyang clan, the fourth master, Changyang Xiongtian, played a crucial and very influential role. When the head of the Xiao family heard the name that belonged to the young imperial protector of the kingdom, he suddenly felt a little terrified. At the same time, he felt that this would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to seize the tree that was Changyang Xiongtian and climb to the sky. Through this, the Xiao family would have nothing to worry about and could survey the entire Jesson kingdom without fear. With a hasty, amiable face, the head began to try his best to show the desire he felt for his family to help the Changyang clan. However, Jian Chen was not moved by the man's friendly demeanor. With a calm voice, he said, "Lord Xiao, a few men of yours have been making trouble for a woman in my brother's village as of late. I hope that you will discipline the parties involved. I would hate to have to come back here in the future, and in the case that I do not say that I am heartless." Jian Chen's voice grew progressively colder as he spoke. The head of the Xiao family along with the other high-ranking members all grew startled. Already their faces grew ruinous as sweat began to pool on their foreheads. It was with incomparable terror that the head of the Xiao family knelt on his knees. He said with a quaking voice, "I beg the honored imperial protector to quell his anger. A misunderstanding has occurred because of my inability to discipline my family. I, Xiao Yun, will strictly punish those few men and return a satisfactory compensation to the imperial protector." This slight from my family will not be repeated. I hope you will do as you say. I will not look into the matters of the past, but there better not be a next time. Jian Chen icily replied. There won't be a next time, I can guarantee it. Hua Yun hurried to respond with terror. He was already keenly clear that if the fourth master of the Changyang clan were to act against his Xiao family, then even the Black Wind sect they had tried so hard to become friends with would be helpless to do a thing for them. Even the Hua Yun sect, which was many times stronger than the Black Wind sect, would be unable to go against the Changyang clan. Such an act was unthinkable for any weaker sect like the Black Wind. Go and apologize to the villagers in person. Jian Chen spoke. Yes. I will do as instructed straight away. The man nervously bobbed his head up and down without daring to speak back. Seeing that an agreement had been made, Jian Chen nodded his head in satisfaction. Looking back to Tai Ta, he asked, Tai Ta, are you happy with how this problem has been solved? Haha, very satisfied. Changyang Xiangtian, you really do have a great face. I didn't think that you would be able to solve this problem so easily. Tai Ta happily laughed. The fact that the problem with the Xiao family had been resolved with barely any energy made him feel very cheerful. Now that we've concluded this business here, let's return. With that, Jian Chen began to will the wind element to carry Ming Dong and Tai Ta up into the air. Within several seconds, the three of them disappeared into the horizon. The entire Xiao family watched Jian Chen and the other two fly away. They all let out sighs of relief when they could no longer see the three. Standing there with some lingering fear, everyone's faces were drenched with sweat. Letting out a sigh to release the tension he felt, Xiao Yun's facial expression hardened as he looked at the other power-wielding members of the family. He ordered, I want you all to search for the ones who dare defend the fourth master of the Changyang clan at once. Search them out and do not let them off. Yes, my lord. Everyone obeyed with equally serious expressions. They were all crystal clear that this case had given the entire family a giant heap of trouble. In fact, possibly a colossal amount of trouble. Jian Chen, Ming Dong, and Tai Ta all flew back to the mountains at a fast speed before finally touching down in a vegetation-filled area to walk the rest of the way to the village. After entering the village, Tai Ta excitedly told the villagers the happy news that Jian Chen had resolved their issues. It was with great joy that the entire village began to look at Jian Chen and Ming Dong with feelings of appreciation. For a good while, only thousands of words of appreciation were spoken for the two. After appeasing the villagers, Jian Chen was pulled into talking with the other villagers by Tai Ta while his mother went off to the kitchens to cook up plenty of dishes to receive Jian Chen and Ming Dong. Hey, Changyang Xiangtian. I recall that back in Kargith Academy, our strengths were pretty much the same. How is it after these few years, you've become so strong? Don't tell me that you have some sort of secret to make yourself stronger. Teach me it then. Tai Ta gave a pleading look to Jian Chen. On the continent, practically every cultivator desired a way to increase their own strength. Even the honest and straightforward Tai Ta was no exception. With a hearty laugh, Jian Chen replied, Of course there is a secret, but whether or not you can take the same road I do is unknown. What secret is it? Tell me now. Tai Ta, will definitely become as strong as you. Even the head of the Xiao family was bent into submission by you. If I can become just as strong as you, then I could let the village live a generation filled with peace. Tai Ta spoke with excitement. This secret's nothing complicated, even I could tell you. Ming Dong spoke first. Tai Ta, if you wish to increase your strength in a flash, the best method would be to explore the outside world and gain some experience. If you waste your time in a village with your talent, it would only stifle your future. Not only is the outside world brilliant, it will teach you many things and is far stronger than the village here. Tai Ta pensively scratched his head. Really? I guess what you say has some sense to it. Back in Kargith Academy, Changyang Xiangtian wasn't too far away from me in strength, but after that, he left Kargith Academy to wander the continent. After so many years, I didn't think that his strength would be so strong as it is now. Could the experience gained from traveling the Tianyuan continent be truly that great on gaining experience in a short period of time? Tai Ta, Ming Dong isn't lying. It's only when you go out and explore the outside world that your strength will improve quickly. You'll learn plenty of things that you would never have been able to experience or see. It's fortunate that I have a mercenary group that I'll be developing in the next 2 days. As of right now, I need some manpower to help out, so if you're willing, you might as well join my mercenary group. In the future, we can all venture the continent and develop this mercenary group even more to become the strongest group in the continent. Jianchen spoke. Tai Ta's eyes began to sparkle with some excitement as he spoke. Then wouldn't that mean we would be able to travel together? Of course. Jianchen laughed. Great then. Tai Ta will follow in whatever you guys will do. Wherever you go, I will go. Tai Ta responded with an excited face. After successfully inviting Tai Ta to join the Flame Mercenaries, Jianchen revealed a happy smile. Tai Ta, then why don't you say your goodbyes to the village? Tomorrow we'll go back to my home for a trip and then we'll introduce you to my friends. On the second morning, Jianchen and the two gathered all the villagers to give their goodbyes before leaving the village. Outside the village entrance, the entire populace of the village convened to give one last farewell to Tai Ta. Brother Giant, you have to return as soon as possible. Chiao Yu's eyes glistened with reluctance as she looked up the giant body that was Tai Ta. Looking back at Chiao Yu, Tai Ta displayed a rather complicated look on his face. Waving his hands, he said, Sister Chiao Yu, I'll come back as soon as possible. Wait until then, and I'll be able to protect the entire village. If you don't dislike this coarse person that I am, then wait until I come back with some money. I'll come back and marry you. Tai Ta mustered up the rest of his courage to speak the last phrase, but after he finished speaking, his dark face turned red. Chiao Yu's entire body began to tremble as if she had been moved by his words. Wiping a tear from her eyes, she said, Brother Giant, Chiao Yu will await your return. Chapter 540. Leaving for the Blue Wind Kingdom. After leaving the village, Jianchen, Mingdong, and Tai Ta flew straight to Lore City. After about 2 hours of leisurely travel, they finally arrived back in Lore City, where they then walked straight to the Changyang clan. We pay our respects to the fourth master. Soldiers saluted Jianchen in the streets with respectful expressions when Jianchen passed by. Waving his hand, Jianchen commanded, Continue your patrol. Yes. The guards responded in unison before going back to their patrol. Changyang Xiangtian, is this your home? It's huge. Tai Ta gasped in amazement as he scoured the place. Laughing, Jianchen replied, Come on, let's go to where I live. I'll introduce you to some friends. Jianchen then guided Tai Ta in the direction of a palace-styled building. He came across some servants and said, Go and notify Dugu Feng, Senior, and Yunzheng to tell them to meet me here. Afterward, Jianchen took Tai Ta into his own palace. As soon as they entered it, Tai Ta, who was ignorant of the outside world, was stunned by the layout and arrangement of the house. Every so often, he would stop to look around the place with an envious expression. Changyang Xiangtian, this is your living space, right? Your family has to be very rich, I bet. Tai Ta sighed in admiration. Tai Ta looked like a farm boy coming into contact with city life for the very first time, prompting Mingdong to say, Tai Ta, you don't need to be so envious. Wait until you become strong enough, you'll get this sort of treatment all of the time then. Tai Ta's eyes gained a determined light to them as he listened to Mingdong. Well, I'll do my best to increase my strength. At this moment, Dugufeng, Yunzheng, and Senior N came walking in from the outside. As soon as they entered, Senior N's loud and rough voice could be heard. Jianchen, you're finally back. When will we be heading out? I'm a person that enjoys traveling the world. Staying around here every day is killing me. Smiling, Jianchen replied, Have a seat, everyone. I'll introduce you all to my friend. After everyone took a seat, Jianchen introduced Tai Ta to the group. After several words of conversation, they all began to grow relaxed. Jianchen thought for a moment before announcing, Now that we're all here, we'll leave tomorrow morning. Go back and prepare yourselves. Whatever you need to buy, get it today. Make sure all of your preparations are finished today. We leave tomorrow? Changyang Xiangtian, where are we going? Tai asked. The Blue Wind Empire. After leaving his room, Jianchen went off to find his parents Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian so he could explain his departure. Although both Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian were reluctant to see their child depart from them again so soon, they knew that their child had already grown up to become a man who had plenty of things to do. There was no way Changyang Xiangtian would be able to reside in their home his entire life, so the two parents clamped down on their thoughts and spoke nothing more. Looking for Xiao Tian and the others, Jianchen told them that he would be leaving first to develop his mercenary group. Xiao Tian and the others understood that there was no need for them to stay within the Changyang clan anymore, so they gave their farewells. The next morning, they would leave the Jessen kingdom to return to the Qin Huang kingdom. Jianchen even paid a visit to Kendall's wife and child, whom he promised to look after on Kendall's behalf. The matters of Sands had weighed heavily on Jianchen's mind, leaving him ashamed and guilty. Many a times he would try to find a way to heal or make up for the destroyed saint weapon of Sands, but as of yet, Jianchen had found no methods. The next morning, Jianchen held the sleeping tiger cub and gathered with Ming Dong, Tai Ta, Du Gufeng, Yun Zheng, and Senior in the courtyard of the clan. All of the high-ranking members came out to send Jianchen off because of his high-ranking status in the clan. Right outside, several Class 3 magical beasts mounts had been prepared by the guards. The beasts stood by the gates. Xiangtian, your silly second sister Mingyue left the family a long time ago without a trace. Despite all our attempts and efforts to try to find her, not even a single hint can be found. When you're traveling in the outside, please help find my girl. The second aunt Yu Fengyan implored Jianchen. For her daughter to disappear without a trace for so long made her worry as a mother. Second aunt, rest assured, I will definitely try my best to find second sister. Jianchen seriously replied. His second sister Changyang Mingyue had cared for him in the past. So now that she had disappeared, even Jianchen worried for her. Bai Yuntian pulled Yu Yu's hand toward Jianchen. Xiang'er, with your strength, you could travel across the outside world and very few people capable of attacking you. Why not bring Yu Yu with you? She grew up in the Imperial Palace her entire life. The only other place she knows of is Kargath Academy. The outside world is still unknown to her, so it would be a good thing to relieve Yu Yu's boredom. Jianchen glanced at Yu. She was wearing a short skirt today with a very casual amount of makeup. It gave her a rather heroic demeanor while she stood shyly by Yuntian's side. Everyone could already see that she was prepared to travel long distances by the way she was dressed. Thinking for a moment, Jianchen felt that he wouldn't come across anything too dangerous while he was in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Combined with Yu Yu's preparations to travel, there was no way he could easily decline. At last, he finally agreed to the request with a smile. Very well. If Yu Yu wishes to travel outside to relieve her boredom, then why not let her travel with us? The princess' face revealed a happy smile at those words. Ever since she was young, the princess would rarely be able to see what the outside of the palace looked like. Bidding farewell to everyone from the clan, the party of 7 finally mounted their magical beasts and began to set off away from Lore City. After leaving Lore City, Jianchen continued to the area where the Eastern deity swords were garrisoned on the outskirts of Lore City. Upon seeing the 3 generals, Jianchen spoke a few words to them before leaving the camp on his mount. Qin Wuming and the other 2 generals watched Jianchen and his group ride away into the distance until they disappeared from view. Speaking up, Qin Wutian asked, Father, now that the business in the Jessen kingdom is over and the Imperial Protector himself has left, when should we leave? Qin Wuming just laughed. Withdrawing our troops from here? That'll be hard. Quite hard indeed. Even if we rush to the Qin Huang kingdom, it'll take well over a year with the speed of our army. Although the space gate from the Dazhou kingdom is nearby, it would take a large amount of monster cores. In fact, it'd take an exorbitant price. Does that mean our army will be garrisoned here then? Qin Wujin asked. Qin Wuming nodded his head. Correct. Originally, when His Majesty ordered 500,000 of our soldiers to go to the Jessen kingdom, he hadn't planned on their return. The Jessen kingdom is far too weak, but with the connection between the Imperial Protector and the royal family of the kingdom, we cannot afford to offend either side. Thus, His Majesty had decided to assist the Jessen kingdom while also helping out the Imperial Protector himself. With his talent, he will eventually become a saint ruler later in his life. So to rope in such an individual without enticement and investments would be foolhardy. I see now. Father, then will the three of us remain here in this place as well? Qin Wujin asked. Qin Wuming smiled. Remaining behind here isn't too bad of a thing, Purse. A saint ruler is an extremely great entity. In their eyes, we heaven saint masters are just ants that aren't worth considering. As of right now, the Imperial Protector hasn't yet become a saint ruler, so this is a good chance for us to foster a good relationship with him. When he breaks through to become one, then we'd be able to have him help us with any trouble we might come across. Even more so, if we have the support of the Imperial Protector, then even the army wouldn't complain or be too impudent. I understand now. This was all planned by His Majesty himself. Indeed, this is a good chance. If the Imperial Protector becomes a saint ruler and is willing to back us, then Father will even have the chance to be promoted to be the general of the kingdom's army. Qin Wutian spoke in realization. Qin Wuming nodded his head with a smile. That is what it means to keep the fertile waters within your own fields. His Majesty is a very wise ruler that is capable of controlling everything within his hand. Even if he cannot, he will do his best to keep us in their good graces. On an official road that zigged and zagged, 7 magical beast mounts could be seen running at high speeds in a fluid motion. They left behind a trail of dust as they passed. Changyang Xiangtian, how long will it take for us to reach the Blue Wind Kingdom at the rate we're going? Yu asked Jianchen from his side. Thinking for a moment, Jianchen responded, at this current rate, it should take 2 or so days before we arrive. It's not as if we're rushing there. Then, with a small pause, Jianchen looked to the princess. You, call me Jianchen in the future rather than Changyang Xiangtian. This must be the name you used after you left the Changyang clan? The princess sweetly smiled. Correct. Jianchen nodded. So you changed your name. No wonder I never heard about you when teachers said the Changyang clan couldn't find you. Jianchen's a fine name to hear though. Changyang Xiangtian, I'll call you that from now on as well. The group of people continued to laugh and chat to each other as they traveled. When it came to thinking about the mercenary group he had once commanded, Jianchen's thoughts practically flew over to Wake City. After so many years have passed, he was unclear just how the mercenary group developed. Chapter 541. Re-entering Wake City after Jianchen and his group left Lore City, the Shao family had all gathered within the halls of their clan compound in Huanga City. The head of the Shao family sat in the topmost position while several dozen youths kneeled down on the other side. If Jianchen and Tai Ta were here, they would be able to confirm that these youths were the very same ones that tried to kidnap Qiu Yu from the village. A report for the Lord. We've made a concise investigation, and these are the ones that offended the 4th master of the Changyang clan. One of the bulkier-looking men cupped his hands as he gave his report. The head of the Shao family, Shao Yun, stared dangerously at the few men. His frosty eyes made the youths afraid to respond or even look up. Your forgiveness, my lord. Please forgive us. We didn't know that they were men from the Changyang clan. We only knew that a female villager was rather pretty, and we wished to have her wed to the young master. We did all of this with the young master in mind. My lord, please spare us. We won't dare do such a thing again. My lord, please give us one more chance. Please forgive us this once. The youths all knew that they had invited disaster upon themselves. Thus they knelt down and wept for forgiveness. Snorting, Xiaoyun replied, drag them out and break both their legs. Yes. The middle-aged men nearby replied. Then calling for several guards, they dragged out the youths to break their legs. Tie them up and prepare them as gifts. We shall head to that village to apologize. Xiao Yun commanded. For the grand and mighty head of the Shao family to personally come to apologize to a mountain village showed just how importantly he viewed this matter. The Cross Mountains was the Tianyuan continent's largest magical beast mountain range. It traversed across the entire continent, bisecting the continent in two. The mountain range took up a sizable portion of land. An endless amount of magical beasts existed within the Cross Mountains. A veritable paradise for magical beasts to congregate at. Many of the Class 6 magical beasts on the continent lived there. Very few of them lived anywhere else. Furthermore, legend had it that within the depths of the mountains existed several Class 7 magical beasts. As a result, the Cross Mountains were designated a forbidden zone for humanity. Any human that tried to enter the Cross Mountains would never find their way back alive. So, the very depths of the Cross Mountains have existed as a forbidden zone for thousands and thousands of years. Even Heaven's Saint Masters were afraid of taking a single step into this land. At this moment, within the depths of the Cross Mountains, stood a 3-meter-tall middle-aged man. This man had a very stalwart in physique. The veins in his body glowed with a golden color. His copper-like muscles bulged as a sign of well-development, and the only clothes he wore was a single pair of shorts that stopped short of his knees. Both of the man's hands drooped down as he stood with hesitation in this area. His eyes flickered with an uncertain light as if unsure of something. Right where he was standing was the common boundary between the abyss of the mountains and the outer world itself. The entire Cross Mountains have been searched already, but the winged tiger god cannot be found. Even Rum Guinness' presence has completely vanished. It appears that she has already brought the winged tiger god from Cross Mountains a long time ago and into the territory of man. If we wish to kill the winged tiger god, then we will have to step into that territory. The man muttered to himself with knotted eyebrows. Rum Guinness has already violated the treaty we have with mankind. Should I reveal this information and let the human experts deal with them? The man thought for a moment before quickly shaking his head. No, that won't do. This involves the ancient mythological winged tiger god. A matter like this is far too important to allow humanity to realize the problem. If they find out and find a way to tame the winged tiger god while it's still a cub, then it'll be a tremendous calamity for the entire magical beast race. It appears that we cannot allow the cub to remain in the human territory, we must kill it, but the moment I step into the human's territory. At this the man's voice began to falter as his eyes began to reveal a deep shade of fear. After a moment, another gleam that would cause anyone to shiver appeared in his eyes. As if he was finally determined, he growled, "The experts of humanity have all hidden themselves. As long as I am careful, they won't find me." With that, the man took a determined step forward across the boundary between the Cross Mountains and the outer world. His body began to glimmer and shake for a moment before shooting off at an inconceivable speed, finally blinking out of sight. 2 days later in the stronghold of the Blue Wind Kingdom, a group of mercenaries could be seen slowly escorting a caravan of goods. Among the crowd were 7 Class 3 magical beasts traveling at a leisurely pace. Sitting on top of these magical beasts were 6 males and a single female. Although they wore plain clothes, their presences were regal and unordinary by any sense of word. Even the people around them didn't dare get too close, and kept a healthy distance as if afraid of unknowingly offending someone of unusual power. After 2 days' worth of traveling, Jian Chen and his group had finally arrived at the Blue Wind Kingdom. After entering the interior of the kingdom's territory, Jian Chen didn't stop. They continued on toward Wake City. The Class 3 magical beasts continued to move at a rapid pace through the lands. They left behind a trail of dust that looked like a single dust dragon from far away. By the end of the day, when the moon had started to rise, Jian Chen's group finally arrived at Wake City. The horizon was already growing a dusky light with the last half of the sun nearly out of sight. The light that radiated from the sunset was enough to illuminate half of the sky. There weren't many travelers moving to and from the gates of Wake City, so only several dozen weary soldiers were guarding the gates. Jian Chen's group of travelers slowly made their way to the gated entrance of the city. Seeing the battle-worn city walls, Jian Chen felt a complex emotion arise on his face as if reminiscing about something. Wake City was a tiny third-class city. In this place, Jian Chen had struggled with no small efforts to survive. His struggles had left deep impressions on him. Each step he took here seemed to link to yet another memory fragment in his mind. Ming Dong stared curiously at the old-fashioned walls of Wake City before speaking up. "Jian Chen, your mercenary group is staying in this city?" Jian Chen nodded, once. "But it has been a long time, I'm not quite sure if they're still in Wake City." With that, Jian Chen and the others entered the city. Stopping a passerby, Jian Chen questioned, Hello there, brother. Are the flame mercenaries still in Wake City? What a strange question. The flame mercenaries have always been in Wake City. Where else would they be if not here? The man stared strangely at Jianchen. Jianchen was overjoyed to hear that. Wonderful. I didn't think that the flame mercenaries would still be here. I was worried they would move to another location. Brother, do you happen to know where they're located at? At the Kai family's compound in the southwest part of the city. The man replied. Many thanks. Jianchen clasped his hand together before urging his mount forward, bringing the other 6 to where he remembered the Kai family's location was. At that moment, there were already a large group of sturdy-looking men gathered at the gates to the Kai family's home. Each one of them possessed a murderous air to them, totaling to over 200 people. Right in front of them were 3 middle-aged men and a single elder standing side by side in a single line in front of the gates. Standing behind these 4 was yet another large group of people with frosty glares of their own. One-armed warrior, your Defiance mercenaries are intolerable with your bullying. Although our flame mercenaries may not be as strong as we once were, that doesn't make us easy targets. Do you really think we'll stand for the annihilation of our group? We'll ensure that your Defiance mercenaries lose just as much as you gain. The elder standing in front glared dangerously at the group in front of him. Standing at the very front was a man with a single arm. Laughing, he spoke, Flame mercenaries, if this were the past, then your group would have the strength to go against my group. With how things stand now, I, the one-armed warrior, really don't see you as a threat. If you don't want to die, then cooperate with us. Join with my Defiance mercenaries and we won't treat you unfairly. Hoping to annex the Flame mercenaries into your Defiance mercenaries is nothing more than the dreams of a madman. The brethren of the Flame mercenaries are not cowards. We will not accept this. A middle-aged man spoke from in front of the gates. Qingfeng, I know that you are not cowards. You are a man in the truest sense of word and thus I respect you. However, your Flame mercenaries cannot compare to my Defiance mercenaries in battle. So why not join with us and help expand the Defiance mercenaries? When we become the Blue Wind Kingdom's strongest mercenary group, I will award you all for your services. From here on out, endless glory and splendor will await us. What is there to disagree with, eh? It's not worth your life to squabble over this. The one-armed man laughed. If not for the absence of the captain of our Flame mercenaries, then your Defiance mercenaries wouldn't even have the chance of going as you please in Wake City. You'd be thrown out before you'd start. Motian gnashed his teeth. The captain of the Flame mercenaries? You must be talking about Jianchen. I've heard about him before. A single man who destroyed the Zhou mercenaries and the Zhou clan by himself before also eliminating the Tianxiong clan in Wake City. Then he even fought with a Class 5 magical beast with his skill. Tut-tut, what a strength he has. Not bad at all. Even I have no choice but to admire him. By this point, the one-armed man had a taunting look on his face as he continued to speak. But what a shame, your captain isn't here. He went off to participate in the gathering of the mercenaries. What an egotistical brat with no knowledge of the world. With just the small amount of fame he achieved in this small city, he thought he was undefeated in the world and joined the gathering of the mercenaries. He should have realized that area is a world that only Earth Saint Masters can survive in. Without that strength, just how could he participate in it? He most likely died in Mercenary City, so how could he even come back to Wake City? Chapter 542. Crisis of the Flame mercenaries. The one-armed man's words caused the 4 men standing in front of the Kai family's gates to harden their expressions. Qingfeng had been the first to fire back. One-armed warrior, bite your tongue. Just how could the immensity of our captain's strength be explained by you? True enough. I feel that this Jianchen's strength is nothing more than hearsay. Whatever his true strength is, I have never seen it before. What I am sure is that he is still not yet at the strength of an Earth Saint Master. If he wasn't one before he went to gathering of the mercenaries, then he's certainly looking to die an early death. It's been a long time since the ending of that event anyways. If your Captain Jianchen was still alive, then why hasn't he returned? The man sneered. Seeing that no one could reply, the one-armed man continued on. I bet you've all already reached an answer. You're just not willing to accept it. Then why don't I say it for you? Your captain died in Mercenary City. He will never come back here alive. The man's words caused every single mercenary from the Flame Mercenaries to blanch, but they quickly schooled their emotions. At this, the man could only shake his head in disappointment. He had originally planned on striking at their morale to influence them all over to his side. In the end it had been fruitless. How would he know that the 100-member strong Flame Mercenaries were all previously the mercenaries under the command of the great Saint Masters Qingfeng, Emotion, Duo Kong, Charcus, Seth, Kai Er, and Weiss? In their hearts, these 7 men were the leaders that they would die for, men that they would continue to follow with unflinching conviction. One-armed warrior, don't bother wasting time with this scheme of yours. We will follow our captain to the death. You may as well give up. Our Flame Mercenaries will never join your Defiance Mercenaries. If you still wish to continue with this thought of yours, then we may as well waste no time and get to fighting. Kai Er spoke. Although they weren't as strong as they once were in the past and were just below the Defiance Mercenaries in strength, the final outcome between the two would be disastrous. The one-armed man's face darkened as he bit his lip. I've given you a chance, but you were unfortunate enough to not cherish it. If this is it, do not blame me for being ruthless now. Brothers, let us fight. At his command, every single man behind him began to take out their saint weapons one by one. Brothers, let us fight. Kai Er and the others called out, unwilling to lag behind. As soon as they spoke, several dozen men from within the Flame Mercenaries took out a bottle from their space belts and smashed it onto the ground. Soon, the courtyard was filled with a light green smog of smoke after the bottles had been broken. The smog obscured the sight of everyone. The actions of these men confused the surrounding Flame Mercenaries. Flabbergasted, they all looked around without any understanding of what was happening. Noticing the commotion going on behind him, Qingfeng turned around only to discover the light green smog of smoke gradually dispersing into the open air around them. Stunned for just a brief moment, Qingfeng immediately snapped back to focus with a cry, "Poison! Everyone hold your breath." Haha, it's too late for that. The one-armed man laughed in an unrestrained manner from outside the courtyard. You! Emotion furiously glared at the man with a frightening expression. His eyes gleamed with a furious and unrestrained killing intent as he ground his teeth. One-armed warrior, I took you to be a man. To think that you'd actually use such a 2-bit method, I've misjudged you. Ah, what method isn't useful? Let me tell you, as long as a method brings you victory, then it is a good method. If you want to survive on the continent, then you can't afford to be inflexible. Otherwise, you won't survive for long. The one-armed man laughed. Take an antidote, now. Kill the traitors in our ranks. Kai Er whirled around to command the Flame Mercenaries. Needless to say, the members of the Flame Mercenaries had already taken out several antidotes from their space belts. Administering them, they turned to face the traitors that had tried to poison them with infuriated glares and murderous auras. After taking several steps forward, each one of the mercenaries had paused with a pained expression on their faces. Coughing, they all began to cough out blood from their mouths as the poison within them finally took effect. Kai Er, Emotion, Qingfeng, and Charcus were startled by this sight. What a strong poison! One of them couldn't help but cry out. Pleased with himself, the one-armed man smiled. Of course. This is a poison I synthesized after paying a heavy price. It isn't any normal type of poison, it has 2 steps to it. The first step is to use a type of poisonous seed that'll hide itself within your body without detection. It'll slowly germinate and grow within your body bit by bit without any of you ever noticing. Then, after using a special method, the seed will begin to rapidly unfold and cause a tremendous amount of pain. This poisonous smoke was the trigger for the poison to activate within your body. This smoke isn't anything special in terms of toxicity. Its only function is to activate the poison inside you since it doesn't require to be breathed in. As long as the body is in contact with it, then the poison will be triggered. Its effects are so strong that in 4 hours, you'll find yourself waking up by the yellow springs. By now, the one-armed man was laughing out loud. There's one more thing I forgot to tell you. The antidote to this poison can't be bought. So don't waste your time taking those antidotes won't help you here. At most, you'll alleviate some of the symptoms, but you won't be able to cure yourself of my poison. One-armed warrior, so you've been planning this for all this time. A month ago, you must have had those traitors of ours plant the poison in our food. Kai Er roared with fury. The poison in his body had already started to activate as blood started to leak from his mouth. Correct. But that can't be blamed on me. Who told you not to surrender the flame mercenaries to me? If you only just surrendered earlier, then this wouldn't have happened to you. The one-armed man laughed before taking out a palm-sized bottle. You have 4 hours. Follow me and prosper, or defy me and die. You have a choice between life or death, and I have only a limited supply. Whoever comes first gets some. Otherwise, pity will be given for the ones that have none. The entire flame mercenaries grew quiet now as the poison within their bodies continued to get worse. By this point, everyone's faces were deathly pale as blood streamed from their mouths. One-armed warrior, don't even think you can persuade us with your 2-bit methods. I, Hyun, will never let you live easily for this life of mine. Emotion barked as he took out his saint weapon. Just as he took a single step forward, a coughing sound came from his mouth and blood erupted from it. If I may offer you some advice, don't try using your saint force. It'll only serve to increase the growth of the poison even more and accelerate your death. The man spoke with a smile. His eyes turned to the men behind Emotion. Take use of the opportunity that the poison hasn't yet reached your hearts. If you wish to live, then hurry up and swear allegiance to my defiance mercenaries. Otherwise, the poison will reach your heart by nighttime. By that point, this antidote of mine will be useless to help you. I only have a limited quantity of this antidote, so choose quickly and don't regret the choice you make. After a moment, there were finally several mercenaries that didn't wish to die. One by one, they slowly walked out of the compound. Watching those men leave their ranks, Kai Er and the others could only sigh to themselves. They couldn't blame them. Soon, more and more mercenaries decided to live and serve the Defiance mercenaries rather than die. In the end, only 60 or so men were left from the original 100+ men. The one-armed man glanced at Kai Er and the other 3 with a chuckle. Kai Er, Qing Feng, Emotion, Charkis, what do you think? There's not many antidotes left, but if you choose to enter my Defiance mercenaries now, I won't mistreat you. The might of the one-armed warrior is far too inadequate for us 4 to join you. Emotion snarled in disdain. Slowly taking up his giant sword, Charkis turned back to look at his 60 or so pale-faced brothers. Heroically he spoke, "My brothers, I am proud of you all, for you are men among men, men born from steel itself. Death is not something to fear. If death is all that we face, then let us pick up our weapons and defend our honor. If we are to die, then we will die magnificently. If we are to die, then we will take with us a sacrifice. We will not let the Defiance mercenaries walk away unharmed." Qing Feng raised up his long sword with a heroic aura. "Brothers, let us fight side by side in this final battle. For battle, for war, for glory." The remaining members of the Flame mercenaries roared out to the heavens one after another in response to Emotion and Qing Feng. Although they were all pale in the face and were bleeding blood from their mouths, their eyes remained unwavering and unafraid of death. They had already given up their fear of death. At this sight, the one-armed man's face darkened. Snorting, he spoke, "If you wish to die, then I'll grant you all that favor. Kill them all." The group of men behind the one-armed man began to let loose a bestial and bloodthirsty amount of killing intent before charging toward the men in the compound. Suddenly, a red glow of light exploded into view as a single flaming longsword came flying at tremendous speeds from the other end of the road. In an instant, it impacted the ground in front of the compound. With a tremendous explosion of energy, the men from Defiance mercenaries were immediately reduced to a pitiful state. Chapter 543, Return of the Captain. Caught off guard by the abrupt explosion, both the Defiance mercenaries and the Flame mercenaries, who were on the verge of war with one another, stopped dead in their tracks. No matter the side, Everyone looked to the gates of the Kai family with shock. Everyone could see from the origin of impact that there was a single 2-meter deep crater. The marbled road had been reduced to rubble with spiderweb-like cracks extending across the ground. Seeing the 2-meter deep crater, the Flame and Defiance mercenaries were deeply awed and stunned. Just what type of strength would one need to be able to cause damage to this extent? It was hard to believe or ascertain for sure, but even a battle skill used by a great Saint Master wouldn't be able to cause a comparable amount of destruction. This was after all marble of a very durable caliber. Not only was it hard and solid, it was unlike the soft and malleable dirt found outside in the wild. The members of the Defiance mercenaries and the men with Kai air looked to the end of the street with hardened expressions. In their hearts they were all apprehensive. Everyone was well aware that the person capable of such destruction would most definitely be either a great Saint Master with a battle skill or an individual at the Earth's Saint Master realm. In either case, it was an individual that neither of the two groups could win against. Even more dangerous was the fact that no one knew whether this newcomer was friend or foe. The colors of the sky were growing dimmer and dimmer as the shroud of night blanketed the earth. As a result, the Flame mercenaries and the Defiance mercenaries could only nervously wait as they listened to clopping sounds from the end of the street. Shortly afterward, 7 magical beast mounts came into view along with their riders who were slowly advancing toward the 2 mercenary groups. Neither the Defiance mercenaries or the Flame mercenaries were able to make out the faces of the riders with full clarity because of the distance and the dampened vision due to the darkness of night. Watching the 7 mounts and riders slowly approach them, the representative of the Defiance mercenaries took a hesitant step forward. Saluting them, he spoke, "This one is the captain of the Defiance mercenaries, known as the One-Armed Warrior. I pay my respects to you seniors." The 7 hadn't spoken at all and moved forward in silence at a slow pace. Coming from one end of the street to the other, they finally arrived at the gates to the Kai family. It was at this moment that the 4 men and the one-armed man could distinctly see the faces of the men. To the shock of everyone, aside from the 2 middle-aged men at the very sides, the rest of the travelers were all youths. I bet this group is a group of aristocratic children from some sort of wealthy family. That strike just now has to be from one of the 2 middle-aged men at the sides. If such a strong individual was assigned as their guards, then the rapport behind this group has to be extremely strong. The one-armed man conjectured to himself. Without neglecting his expressions, he continued to bow respectfully as he smiled enchantingly. "My lords must be traveling across this road. My sincere apologies, I shouldn't have blocked the roads at all. Allow me to give way." With that, the man immediately ordered his mercenaries to move out of the way. "My lords, this one is known as the One-Armed Warrior, captain of the Defiance mercenaries. Although our strengths are well beneath your eyes, there is very little that my mercenaries cannot accomplish in Wake City. Should my lords ever require assistance in the future, do call on us. My lords, the road is clear now, if you please." The man saluted along with the other mercenaries with a rather cordial expression on his face. At this current moment, the one-armed warrior was completely focused on the riders on top of the magical beast mounts, and had completely disregarded the men behind him. Kai Er and the other 3 were at this moment staring at the face of Jian Qin in complete shock. Some of them could barely believe their eyes at what they saw. Despite the fact that Jian Qin had left Wake City 2 years ago, Kai Er and the others would recognize Jian Qin from anywhere. After participating in the gathering of the mercenaries, it had taken Jian Qin 2 years to return in their moment of peril. Such timing painted Jian Qin as a savior in their eyes. The flames of hope had reignited within their eyes once more at this sight. It was almost as if the glorious dawn of victory could be seen instead of the initial dusk of defeat. Seeing the ingratiating appearance of the one-armed man, Jian Qin couldn't help but find himself smiling from where he sat. This smile was not a happy smile, but a cold one. Shortly after, his eyes slowly made their way toward the gates of the Kai family where Kai Er and the others were. A furious killing intent gradually began to show in his eyes, so with a smile that did not quite make its way completely to his eyes, Jian Qin spoke, "The One-Armed Warrior? I will remember that name." There was absolutely no way that the one-armed man would know that this youth in front of him was actually the captain of the flame mercenaries, Jian Qin. He had only thought that he had coincidentally come across the young master of some sort of influential and aristocratic family, and had completely missed the implied meaning hidden in Jian Qin's words. As such, he had been overjoyed to hear Jian Qin and spoke up, "If I may inquire of milord's name." "This will be a great honor to the one-armed warrior. Milord, the path is clear now, I shall not take up any more of your valuable time. If my lord pleases." A cold smile remained on Jian Qin's face. "One-armed warrior, who says that I was passing by on this road? My destination is here in fact." The man was startled into silence at these words. The light in Jian Qin's eyes immediately frosted over as a tremendous amount of killing intent began to leak from his body and enshrouded the other man in it. "One-armed warrior, do you know who I am?" Jian Qin asked with a demanding growl. The one-armed man's face seemed to have aged by now. As a great Saint Master, just how would he be able to withstand the killing intent of a heaven Saint Master? Straight away, it felt as if he had been dropped into a bottomless abyss of ice that brought shivers and sweat to his entire body. The one-armed man was completely pale with fright now. For the life of him, he had absolutely no idea just how or why the aristocratic young lord in front of him was targeting him with such a tremendous amount of killing intent. It left him speechless beyond belief and indescribably terrified. Neither did he know just when or how he had somehow offended the very same strong young lord. "Milord, could I have offended you somehow in some place? Might I inquire the specifics?" There was a trill to his voice now. Although he had no idea how strong Jian Qin was, the amount of killing intent targeted at him was enough to leave his heart in terror. From his perch on top of the magical beast mount, Jian Qin towered over the one-armed man with a sneer. "One-armed warrior, listen well. I am the one you said died in Mercenary City. I am the captain of the Flame Mercenaries. Jian Qin." The pupils of the one-armed man instantaneously dilated at Jian Qin's speech. His face took on a drastic change as his eyes stared in disbelief at Jian Qin with absolute dread. "What? You're that Jian Qin?" The man was beside himself and his voice began to tremble. When the four men at the gates heard Jian Qin's words, they let out a gasp of disbelief one after another, but the emotions in their eyes was of extreme joy. The captain has returned. Our captain has finally returned. It's the captain. The captain has returned from the gathering of the mercenaries." Kai Er and the three continued to cry out in emotional relief one after another while the dozens of mercenaries behind them began to reveal wide open grins on their faces. As deep in the abyss of death as they were, their hands had managed to fumble and grab onto a vine that would pull them to safety. In that darkness of death, the light of life could be seen now. Having noticed the deathly pale faces of everyone, Jian Qin didn't waste any more time to banter. Glaring at the one-armed man, Jian Qin said, "One-armed warrior, you are courageous to go against my flame mercenaries, I'll give you that." The one-armed man's face was a mixture of pale white and putrid green from his fear and shock. Seeing the handsome but young face of Jian Qin and associating him with the tremendous explosion of power, caused his heart to be terrified. "You're actually the very same Jian Qin as the captain of the Flame Mercenaries? Didn't you go off to participate in the gathering of the mercenaries? How did you make it out alive?" The man quavered. Coldly laughing, Jian Qin replied, "Enough talk, bring out the antidote straight away." A gleam of light flashed through the one-armed man's eyes. Immediately thinking of a plan, he took out a white jade bottle from his space belt and held it tightly within his hands as he backed away. In several moments, he stood 20 meters away from Jian Qin with a panicked face. "Jian Qin, I only have this much antidote. If you don't believe me, I'll just smash it all here and now for you to never get the antidote to my poison." Jian Qin smiled in contempt as he glared at the man. "Did you think you could negotiate with me?" The one-armed man stared fearfully at Jian Qin and then the two middle-aged men Yun Zheng and Senior. In realizing the strength of the opposition, the fear he had in his heart for these men had instantly skyrocketed. However, for the sake of a safe return, he didn't have a choice. Since he poisoned the men of the Flame Mercenaries, He knew there was no way that Jianchen would let them go now. Jianchen, if you want the antidote, fine. However, you must promise us that we will be granted a safe departure from here. The man cried out. Without waiting for Jianchen to reply, he waved for his men and shouted, "Brothers, run away." Every single member of the Defiance mercenaries immediately knew that they were the weaker party. Without hesitation, they all collected their saint weapons and ran off in all directions with reckless abandon. Leaving won't be as easy as you think. Jianchen's face hardened. Ming Dong, Dugurfeng Yunzheng, Senior, stop them all. Kill anyone that tries to escape without mercy. All right. Ming Dong laughed out loud as he flew out from his saddle. Transforming into an azure light while in midair, he disappeared from sight. He reappeared 100 meters away to cut off the other side of the road where the Defiance mercenaries were trying to run away. Dugufeng, Yunzheng, and Senior had already realized the roles they would have to act out in this scene. They didn't dare defy Jianchen's commands. Without hesitation, they flew into the air and followed Ming Dong's route to stop the mercenaries from running off in any direction. Startled, the one-armed man held the bottle high into the air and stared dangerously at Jianchen. Jianchen, this synthesis of mine has only one antidote. Do you really want your entire flame mercenaries to die from deadly poison? You have no right to threaten me. Furthermore, you have no right to demand negotiations. Jianchen barked. With a single thought, he began to gather the boundless energy of the world to swirl around them in a frantic manner. The tide of energy began to swirl around the one-armed man, rendering him incapable of movements. With an extension of his arm and palm, Jianchen forced the bottle in the man's hand fly to his own. Having witnessed the methods of a heaven saint master struck no small amount of fear into the heart of a great saint master like the one-armed warrior. On the other side, Ming Dong and the other three had completely blocked the exit of the Defiance mercenaries. Within seconds, someone within the group had cried out, "They're only several men. We can take them on charge." That's right. With just those four, we're far more than them. If we all fight now, we can slaughter them. One after another, the mercenaries of the Defiance mercenaries took out their saint weapons and charged straight at Ming Dong to strike him down. "You're acting recklessly here." Ming Dong laughed. Before he could make a move, Dugufeng made a motion to stop him. Expressionlessly, Dugufeng said, "I alone will be enough to deal with them." Chapter 544. Punishment. Having said that, Dugufeng immediately brought out a giant sword made of flames. After a violent jerk of his hand, a blaze of flames began to coil around the blade before an inferno ignited on it. A halo of light burst from the sword. It brought forth such a dazzling glow that the surrounding shadows were completely obliterated. Impossible, that's the essence of fire. It's the essence of fire, he's an Earth Saint Master. Everyone run away. He's an Earth Saint Master. At this display of strength, the smarter members of the Defiance mercenaries quickly became pale in the face. The spurt of courage that had welled up in them earlier had instantly vanished just as quickly it came. Without any more courage to fight, they began to retreat in terror. A gleam of light flashed in Dugufeng's eyes as he twirled his giant sword in a violent motion. The light from the fire on his sword filled the sky. He then quickly brought forth another burst of flames, but this time he directed them down the streets with lightning speed. Bang! The street was washed with a plume of smoke, and the marble substance on them had crumbled as easily as tofu. A fissure about a third of a meter deep appeared in the street as a surge of saint force filled the area, forcing the entire street to tremble as if it was experiencing an earthquake. Feeling the explosive might that came from a casual swing of Dugufeng's sword, every member of the Defiance mercenaries felt miserable beyond belief. At this moment, practically every person could only think about how terrifying an Earth Saint Master was. Calmly recollecting his sword, Dugufeng stared emotionlessly at the Defiance mercenaries. "Whoever crosses this line, consider your life forfeit." He spat. The entire group of mercenaries was practically quaking with fear, for the fissure was barely in front of their feet. Everyone could only look at the line as if it represented death itself. Not a single person dared to cross it. On the other side, the one-armed man could only stare at the red-robed Du Gufeng in shock. He had been thrown into silence by the scene in front of him. The man could hardly believe that the captain of the Flame Mercenaries was capable of commanding an Earth Saint Master to do his bidding. In the small city that was Wake City, Great Saint Masters were already considered the epitome of strength. In the entire city, there would only be 20 of them at most. Earth Saint Masters would hardly find any worth by heading to such a small city in this area. In the case that one did arrive, then they would indisputably be the strongest expert around. In the scope of the entire city, none would be a match for them. Now that the Flame Mercenaries had an Earth Saint Master-leveled expert, just who in Wake City would dare go against them? The Flame Mercenaries were astonished by Du Gufeng's strength as well, but soon their expressions were quickly filled with joy and their bodies began to shake with trepidation. If someone as strong as an Earth Saint Master listened to their captain, then wouldn't that mean that this person was one of their own? Jian Chen tossed the bottle he had forcibly taken from the one-armed man's hand over to Kai Er. "Hurry up and take the antidote." "Yes, Captain," Kai Er enthusiastically responded. Twisting off the stopper to the bottle, they each poured a drop of the liquid into their mouths before they passed the bottle on. There had been plenty of antidote within the bottle for everyone to have some. Even better, more than half of the bottle remained, contradicting the words that the one-armed warrior had said earlier about there being a limited supply. After administering the antidote, every poisoned mercenary soon felt the color return to their faces. Soon enough, the poison was flushed from their systems, and was no longer a threat to their lives. Jian Chen leaped off his magical beast mount and walked up to Kai Er. "It seems that my return was in time to save your lives. A lot must have happened in these last 2 years. Why don't I see Duo Kong, Seth and Weiss? Where have they gone?" A grieved look appeared on Kai Er's face. "Captain, it was all because of our inabilities. The strong mercenary group you left us with is now reduced to these several dozen members. A year ago, Duo Kong, Seth, and Weiss came across an accident that marked their eternal departure from us. From the 7 of us, only 4 remain." Jian Chen could only sigh with regret at that. Those 7 men had been the strongest men he had managed to bring under his control. At the same time, they served as the pillar of the Flame Mercenaries, so he had felt exceptional concern for the 7. Suddenly, the whistling sound of air could be heard. The one-armed man took the opportunity to escape while Jian Chen reminisced with the Flame Mercenaries. With a sudden leap, he tried to bound over the rooftops in an attempt to get away. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed in irritation, but he did not turn his body or head around. Instead, he pointed a finger behind him. A flash of sword chi came flying from his finger and flew through the air with unbelievable speed before coming into contact with the right arm of the one-armed warrior. "Ah!" The one-armed man let out a miserable shout. The only arm he had was bisected. It flopped to the floor while a stream of blood came flying out from his arm like a bloody rainstorm. The one-armed warrior fell from the sky to the ground in a sorry state of pain. He only had one arm to begin with, and that was the reason why he was known as the one-armed warrior. For his remaining arm to be gone now, he was nothing more than a handicapped man. Every single member of the Defiance Mercenaries felt horrified to see their leader crippled. One by one, they looked at Jian Chen with fearful eyes. The one-armed warrior was the strongest within their Defiance Mercenaries. His defeat was an extreme blow to the Defiance Mercenaries as a whole. Kai Er and the other 3 were once more floored by Jian Chen's strength since he had easily cut off and crippled the man's remaining arm. Their faces soon became ecstatic. If the Flame Mercenaries follow a strong figure such as Jian Chen as their captain, then their success would be immeasurable. The peerless miracle that our captain has given us has opened my eyes to the world. Mo Tian couldn't help but emotionally remake. His eyes were brimming with tears as he spoke. Seeing Jian Chen's strength seemed to have given Mo Tian a glimpse of the glorious tomorrow of the Flame Mercenaries. Having such a strong captain lead the mercenaries would make it extremely hard for the group not to grow. Jian Chen smiled and looked at the 64 members of the Flame Mercenaries with admiration. "You've done well as the pride of the Flame Mercenaries. In the future, Jian Chen will waste no effort to help you grow." After experiencing such hardships, the remaining members of the Flame Mercenaries were without a doubt worth Jian Chen's respect and his investment to make them strong. So, Jian Chen felt determined to not even bother training anyone else. Jian Chen's words made Kai Er and the others extremely happy. Many thanks to the captain for your guidance. The previous members of the Flame Mercenaries who chose to live all felt regret appear on their faces. Seeing that there was no way to escape, they could only look back with gloomy and fearful expressions as members of the Defiance Mercenaries. Then looking back to the captain of the Flame Mercenaries, who had suddenly returned, the ones who chose life over death had immediately felt ashamed. Earlier, they had chosen to live by leaving the Flame Mercenaries after being backed into a corner by the Defiance Mercenaries. They had previously thought they wouldn't need to fear for their lives, but who would have known that the situation would have taken such a drastic turnabout? The tides of victory that the Defiance Mercenaries had once held suddenly changed when the captain of the Flame Mercenaries reappeared to toss them into a hole. Whether they could leave or not would depend on the mood of the Flame Mercenaries. Therefore, the Flame Mercenaries who betrayed them felt incomparably embarrassed and ashamed by their actions to the point where they could hardly look into the eyes of the brothers they had once fought shoulder to shoulder with. Jian Chen's eyes hovered over the group where the Defiance Mercenaries stood, but the Flame Mercenaries who had chosen to leave could only hang their heads in shame, unable to look at Jian Chen. I will leave judgment of the Defiance Mercenaries to you. Whether they die or live, it is up to you to decide. Jian Chen spoke calmly without looking at the ex-members of the Flame Mercenaries. The one-armed warrior and his Defiance Mercenaries must be disposed of. Their hands are stained with the blood of our brothers. How could I not take revenge for my fallen brothers? Mo Tian's teeth gnashed against each other as he spoke with a murderous fire in his eyes. Hearing that, the great Saint Masters of the Defiance Mercenaries grew startled. Giving each other a look, they immediately leaped to the sky. They leapt into every direction possible in order to escape. They had killed many of the Flame Mercenaries before, so they knew that to stay behind was to await death without hope. As things were, they may as well try their best to escape for a chance at life. Ming Dong mockingly laughed. If I let you escape right under my nose, I'd have no face to hand over to my brothers. With that, Ming Dong and Dugu Feng immediately lashed out with their arms. They shot out several blades of sword qi that bisected all of the great Saint Masters in half. Blood and body parts came raining down from the sky with their deaths. Watching the strongest members of their group be easily killed by the individuals of the opposing side, the rest of the Defiance Mercenaries had gone ghostly white in terror of Dugu Feng and Ming Dong. Please spare us, Captain Jian Chen. 1,000 pardons. We will leave the Defiance Mercenaries for the Flame Mercenaries and work like oxen if need be. Please forgive us this once. I still have a wife and child to take care of back home. Please forgive us, Captain Jian Chen. Everyone from the Defiance Mercenaries knew where all the power lay now. Some of the ones unwilling to die began to kneel on the ground and kowtow repeatedly in desperation. Qing Feng walked up to them step by step. Our Flame Mercenaries will not kill every last one of you, but we won't just let you off so easily. Hand over your space belts and you may leave. We'll do it, we'll do it. Qing Feng's words were like the song of a gospel to the ears of the Defiance Mercenaries. As if they were granted amnesty, not a single one of them hesitated to relinquish their space belts. They obediently handed them over. 2 Earth Saint Masters appearing caused their hearts to feel an unbelievable amount of pressure. Just then, one of the members who previously chose to leave the Flame Mercenaries to live walked up to Qing Feng. Boss, would it be possible for me to rejoin the Flame Mercenaries? You know that I have family at home unlike the rest of my carefree brothers. I can't die, and there was no other choice. Qing Feng was quiet and turned to look at Jian Chen. Jian Chen thought for a moment before waving his hand. You may leave. As thanks for your service for once being a member of the Flame Mercenaries, you need not hand over you things. Just leave. The Defiance Mercenaries had all given their space belts before being able to leave from this place in peace. True to their words, the Flame Mercenaries did not kill everyone without reason. However, the traitors that had poisoned them were tied up. Chapter 545. the direction of development. The ex-members that had poisoned the Flame mercenaries had been bought out by the Defiance mercenaries a long time ago, and were thus not spared by Kai Er. Their heads were cut off, and their corpses were tossed into the wilderness outside of Wake City for the beasts to feast on. With everything done and taken care of, the group cleaned up the area around the Kai family's compound before heading straight on in. Within the halls, Jian Chun sat at the very top where the head of the compound would normally sit. At his side was Ming Dong and the 5 others, along with Kai Er and his 3 companions from the Flame mercenaries. Kai Er, Qing Feng, Mo Tian, and Charkis, what has happened since my departure those years ago? Why has the Flame mercenaries fallen into such a miserable state? Jian Chun stared at the 4 in question. Captain, it was all because of our inability. Not only were we unable to expand the Flame mercenaries, we also let it fall into such a desolate state. If not for the captain coming over to help us, then our Flame mercenaries may not have survived beyond today. Kai Er spoke in shame. Describe what happened to me in detail. Allow me to understand just what occurred in the past. Jian Chun spoke. Kai Er gave a look to the other 3 for a moment before summoning up his courage. Captain, allow me to say it. When you first left, we followed your orders on doing our best to expand the Flame mercenary strength. At that time our strength was enough to make us undefeatable in Wake City, so our very first step was to reorganize the structure of Wake City and reclaim all the power that had been lost to us. Our plan was performed without a hitch when we were first implementing it. We were trying to bring many of the other clans and powers under our command along with several of the weaker mercenary groups. Thus, the Flame mercenaries attained another level of power, but there were some factions within Wake City that were unwilling to join with our Flame mercenaries. Forming an alliance, they began to contend against our Flame mercenaries. This coalition of theirs was filled with several of the stronger families and mercenaries within the city, making their strength no less than our own. For some time, we battled secretly with them in the shadows of the city, receiving damage on both sides. Half a year later, it was discovered that the cub of a Class 5 magical beast was found. The news was leaked and had made its way to the ears of the enemy alliance. This time, our Flame mercenaries and that alliance were embroiled in an all-out war because of the cub. Both of our sides ended up inflicting a tremendous amount of damage. In the end, our Flame mercenaries managed to win over the enemy alliance. Alas, Weiss and Seth were both casualties of the war. Upon hearing of a Class 5 magical beast cub, Jian Chen's eyes gained a strange light to them. This cub belongs to the Golden Tiger King, doesn't it? Correct. That cub was indeed the Golden Tiger King's cub. It was unable to attack because of its adolescence. Hence, our Flame mercenaries were able to obtain it. But unfortunately, Kai Er's voice began to falter at this point as pain and grief filled his face. But what? Jian Chen's eyes continued to stare down at Kai Er with the same strange light. There was an unforgivable and unforgettable hatred etched between this Golden Tiger King's cub and Jian Chen. It was because of this cub that the original Captain Kendall was killed and the rest of the members beside him had been buried in the mountain range. It was because of our carelessness that the cub was stolen at night by a secret assailant. Duo Kong gave chase, but he ended up being beheaded. Taking a look at the wreckage later, we were able to ascertain that the assailant that took the cub was in possession of a battle skill. Qing Feng sighed with regret etched on his face. It was all because of my negligence. Mo Tian regretfully spoke. The anguish on his face could hardly be contained, as if he blamed himself over Duo Kang's death. Jian Chen's face hardened as he questioned, "Did you manage to find out just who it was that took the cub away?" Not a single piece of information was found. That assailant didn't leave behind any clues for us to find. The cub was never found in Wake City ever again. Charkis shook his head. Jian Chen's eyebrows rose as he began to think to himself. Meanwhile, Kai Er continued to speak. After that, our forces were weakened against the might of the alliance. Now stuck at a deadlock, we were very surprised to hear that the alliance had begun to suffer from internal strife. Beginning to fight one another, it led to us witnessing the entire alliance crumble and wither away into ash. We tried to take advantage of the chaos to subdue the rest of the straggling factions, But what we didn't expect was that another party would come in like the storm and beat us to it. They were the Defiance mercenaries. Not even a few days later, the leader of the Defiance mercenaries, the one-armed warrior, had even come to us and ordered us to swear allegiance to his mercenaries. After our refusal, the Defiance mercenaries began to act as a foil to our own. There was some sort of unusual connection between City Lord and the one-armed warrior, so they were looked after with special consideration by the City Lord. As a result, the Defiance mercenaries began to explode in development. Along the way, our mercenaries came into conflict with theirs several times to end up with what you witnessed today. Jian Qin hummed to himself after listening to the entire conversation. I didn't think that so much would happen in a short 2 years. Things have gotten far more complicated than I thought, but this cannot be blamed on you. Qing Feng hesitated for a moment before opening his mouth once more. Captain, there is still one more thing to report. Say it. Jian Qin spoke. Captain, after Weiss' death, Weiss' son took over the Dor clan and withdrew from our flame mercenaries. Now that Captain has returned, should we have the Dor clan rejoin us? Qing Feng asked. Giving it some consideration, Jian Qin spoke. No matter what is said, Weiss is a man who died for our flame mercenaries and merits a spot as a minister for outstanding service. I will go to his clan tomorrow. It's getting late now, and you should all go rest. Now that I've returned, the flame mercenaries' development will not be stopped. Tomorrow morning, I will have several important announcements for everyone. Kai Er and the other 3 left the hall so that Jian Qin and his group of 7 were the only ones left. Jian Qin, so this is your mercenary group? There's only 4 great Saint Masters and an unremarkable amount of strength, but that isn't important. With our strengths, it won't take long for us to transform the Flame Mercenaries into the strongest mercenary group in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Ming Dong spoke. And that is my plan as well. So, in light of this, does anyone have any favorable plans we may try? Jian Qin asked. Simple, we must build up our army. As long as you announce the fact that there are 7 Earth Saint Masters, I am sure many mercenaries would be willing to join us. Ming Dong suggested. While that is a decent plan, it will only bring forth the people with hidden agendas. We cannot find everyone, and it won't be long in the future that another repeat of today's events happen again. In my eyes, we should make our soldiers an elite squad, but in a controllable number. An elite squad of 100 can defeat a mob of 1,000 civilians. Dugufeng spoke. Oh, that's not bad. Dugufeng's suggestion has some merit to it. Why don't we just spend some time and blood in training these soldiers into becoming the elite soldiers we want? Ming Dong asked. Training them to become elite soldiers is a must. These soldiers are ones that I find suitable in both my mind and in reality, but it isn't enough. My goal is that in the future, the Flame Mercenaries will become the strongest on the Tianyuan continent. It will take a very long time, but this cannot be done slowly. I must move fast, move swiftly. Jian Qin said. Then I have a suggestion, everyone please consult about this as you see fit. Yu Yu finally spoke up from her long-seated silence. Jian Qin, if you wish to develop the Flame Mercenaries as quick as possible, then there is really only one path for you to go. You must go to the stronger cities and subdue all of the stronger mercenary groups under your control. With your strength, as long as you don't come across any Heaven Saint Masters, you will meet no obstruction. If we do that, then even if they swear allegiance to us on the surface, who knows what they just might do in secret. The things that happened today should be a lesson. Seniorin spoke. That isn't something we should worry about. In the face of absolute power, any machinations become as threatening as a paper tiger. The men with brains will see the strength of our group and know what they ought to do. To follow us would be to further their paths and reach a new height. If they stay within the mercenary group for long enough, they will come to love and cherish the group. Just like a civilian that lives in a kingdom, they will come to love the kingdom and cherish it as their family. The princess spoke. Moreover, Jian Qin is a Heaven Saint Master and a very strong one at that. The amount of individuals like him in any single kingdom is known to be scarce no matter where you are. To have a Heaven Saint Master as your patron is something every single person hopes for. To have a heaven saint master as their patron is to have their statuses elevated even if they themselves are not strong. Needless to say, they will not fear some other force swallowing their power whole. Thus, they have no reason to decline joining us. Everyone had fallen silent after Yu gave her piece. They all knew that she had only spoken words of pure logic. Truly, in the face of absolute power, any machination or secret plots were nothing more than paper tigers. No matter how big the wave, there would be no internal strife within the group as long as their captain remained upright. Jian Chen sat in silence as well as he processed her words. Taking notes of the detailed plan of Yu, Jian Chen finally smiled and nodded his head. That isn't bad at all. Let us work as such. Having her own plan be approved by Jian Chen caused Yu's face to reveal a delightful smile. However, there is one thing to be cautious about. When using force to make them submit, do not remove all forms of power from their previous leaders. Otherwise, even if they submit, their anger for you will never be forgotten. Their mercenary groups were after all founded on hard work as well. If all of your hard work was so easily dismissed and taken away by someone else, I doubt there is a single person in the world that would accept such a slap in the face. Chapter 546. Increase of Strength, that is only natural. Yu, your plan is quite impressive. The flame mercenaries will use this method from now on to become the strongest in the shortest amount of time possible. Jian Chen laughed with a happy smile on his face. Then, as if thinking of something else, the smile receded from his face. However, before we can develop the group, I still have several things that I need to take care of. Well, we will adjourn here for now. Everyone should go rest. We will continue this talk tomorrow. Kai Er had long since had his family prepare the most fanciful of rooms for Jian Chen and his entourage to rest in. Aside from the servants of the Kai family tidying up the broken bits and pieces of the courtyard and gates, only the sounds of the night could be heard. While Jian Chen and his group slept, news of the events that had transpired within the courtyards of the Kai family quickly made their way around the city. It didn't take long for the news to reach its way back to the mansion of the city lord. Within the mansion, the city lord Yunli could be seen sitting by his table with a cup of tea in hand. If it were any other time, then the lord would have long since retired to his bed for the night, but today was different. He knew that tonight would be the night that the Defiance mercenaries would clash with the Flame mercenaries. After tonight, there would no longer be a Flame mercenaries in Wake City, only the Defiance mercenaries. Just then, a black-robed man came scurrying into the room and kneeled on the ground. A report for the city lord. The captain of the Flame mercenaries has returned. The Defiance mercenaries have been killed, and the leader, the one-armed warrior, has been crippled and captured by them. The remaining Great Saint Masters were all beheaded in their attempt to escape, while the remaining members forfeited their space belts in order to live and escape in peace. What? Their captain who hasn't returned in 2 years has actually come back? And he's captured the one-armed warrior as well, you say? Yunli was astonished. He didn't expect this outcome at all. Yes, my lord. As of now, all of the Great Saint Masters of the Defiance mercenaries have been wholly slaughtered. Their mercenary group is no more. The informant relayed. Yunli's face paled by several shades of white for a moment before he slowly calmed himself. With a wave of his hand, he commanded, "You may leave. Your subordinate will withdraw for now." The informant immediately disappeared into the palace halls. After the informant left, Yunli's face hardened in worry as his eyebrows knit together. With a slow sigh, he murmured to himself, who would have imagined that Jian Chen would actually return at this moment? Truly, the machinations of man are superseded by those of the heavens. The Blue Wind Kingdom was millions of kilometers away from Mercenary City. In just travel time alone, it would take roughly half a year to get from one to the other. That was the reason why no news had made its way from there yet, so the city lord would naturally not know about the events that transpired in Mercenary City. Early the next morning, all 60 or so members of the Flame mercenaries gathered in the Kai family's courtyard. They stood tall and proudly with their eyes gleaming with brightness. In front of them, Jian Chen, Ming Dong, Du Gufeng, Yun Zheng, Senior and Tai Ta, and Yu stood carefree. Jian Chen's eyes wandered over the group of people in front of him before he worked up an impassioned expression to make a speech. From today on, our flame mercenaries will begin our climb in earnest. Our next goal is to become the strongest mercenary group within the Blue Wind Kingdom as soon as possible, and then the strongest mercenary group within the area. As of now, I will be serious and make an announcement. Pausing briefly to take in a deep breath, Jian Chen pointed at Ming Dong. This is Ming Dong, and from now on, he will be the vice captain of our flame mercenaries. His power will be just below mine, but higher than everyone else's. Does anyone have any objections? There are none. We welcome our new vice captain. Kai Er had been the first to express his approval. Ming Dong may be as young as his son, but after witnessing how Ming Dong had so easily killed the experts of the Defiance mercenaries last night, he was well convinced of his strength. An Earth Saint Master was one that they could hardly afford to invite, so how could they refuse? There are no objections. We welcome our new vice captain, Ming Dong. Welcome to the new vice captain. One by one, the members of the Flame Mercenaries began to cheer and welcome Ming Dong with jubilant expressions. Continuing on, Jian Chen said, "This is Dugu Feng. His strength has been made clear to everyone, I presume. As an expert of the Earth Saint Master level, he will be given a position as an elder within our Flame Mercenaries." This time, Jian Chen's statement of Dugufeng's strength had caused every single member to feel exuberant with happiness. Right now, their loyalty to the Flame Mercenaries in their hearts grew so deep that should the need arise, they would lay their lives down for it. The Flame Mercenaries were even more important than their own families. With the addition of 2 Earth Saint Masters to their group, just how could they not be happy? The faces of Kai Er, Qingfeng, Emotian, and Charkis in particular were essentially streaming with tears. It was clear to them that the days of suffering for the Flame Mercenaries were finally over. What they would now welcome would be the dawn of a glorious tomorrow. Jian Chen's heartstrings began to tug as he looked at the excited faces of everyone. When he saw the deep expressions on their faces, Jian Chen knew that these men were the true pillars of the Flame Mercenaries. Despite their strengths not being that great, these members were true and faithful to the Flame Mercenaries. Jian Chen took in a deep breath to school his emotions before continuing with his speech. These 3 are Yun Zheng, Senior, and Tai Ta. Yun Zheng and Senior are both Earth Saint Masters as well. They will serve as the law keepers for our mercenaries. Upon hearing that both Yun Zheng and Senior were Earth Saint Masters, the Flame Mercenaries exploded into a rambunctious cheer. Their emotions flooded their faces at an unprecedented speed. The excitement continued for some time before Jian Chen held up his palm to calm the crowd. Tai Ta is a great Saint Master, but he will hold the same position of power as Kai Er, Qingfeng, Emotian, and Charkis. Henceforth, the mercenaries here today will be the core of the Flame Mercenaries. Everything you might need for your cultivation, such as funding, living expenses, or anything else required by you mercenaries, will be handled by the entirety of the group. The monster cores required for your cultivation will be provided for your strength to be increased. By now, Jian Chen possessed a mountain of monster cores and a surplus of wealth that could rival an entire nation. To provide for these 60 or so men whose strengths were at the Great Saint Master would be nothing more than a single hair from 9 cows. Furthermore, these men had experienced a trail of fire to prove their loyalty. Hence, they were worth Jian Chen's time to nurture and train. Jian Chen's words caused the entire mercenary group to fly into another frenzy once more. Why did they become mercenaries? Was it not to hunt the monster cores from the magical beasts to cultivate? Was it not for exchanging these cores for money to cover their living expenses? With Jian Chen now handling the expenditures for both monster cores and their costs of living, all of their worries in life practically alleviated. They could dedicate the rest of their time and energy to cultivating. No more would they have to fight with others for monster cores. This alone brought them no small amount of elation. This tremendous windfall was so sudden that many of the men thought that they had fallen into a dream. The events that were happening in front of them simply couldn't be real. They had to be an illusion. Jian Chen took out a white jade bottle from his space ring. This is an unbelievable heavenly resource that money cannot buy in this world. Its name is the 100-grass wine. It has the ability to increase your strength, so I will grant you all a drop. Jian Chen unstoppered the bottle and allowed a drop of the green liquid to slowly pour out one at a time. Once it was in the air, it floated up beside Jian Chen. After having poured out the rest of the bottle and using his mind to float them in the air, Jian Chen had the droplets delivered to the 60 members, Kai Er, and the other 3. Everyone could only stare blankly at the floating green droplets. Jian Chen's method of delivery had surprised them. For a bizarre sight like this was something they had never seen before. Seeing the stunned looks on everyone's faces, Jian Chen revealed a faint smile. Hurry and drink it. If exposed too long to the outside world, its potency will decrease. As if shaken from their stupor, every single mercenary immediately opened their mouths to swallow the liquid. A surge of boundless energy began to fill the entirety of their being as soon as the green liquid entered their stomachs. It caused the members to feel greatly shocked. Some of them even fell to the ground in a seated position so they could fully dedicate themselves to digesting the raw energy coursing through their bodies. The thousands of years old 100-grass wine was something that had the greatest benefit on an individual of the Heaven Saint Master level. Jian Chen himself had used the 100-grass wine to increase the power of his mind. In Kargath Academy, it had even been enough to force Kafir through the bottleneck he had been stuck at for many years. From this, it could be seen that the potency of the 100-grass wine was extremely effective. Despite this, Jian Chen was still willing to let each member have a drop of the wine. The great saint's or Saint Master's strength would substantially increase after receiving such a boundless amount of energy packed in this drop of wine. An hour later, Qing Feng, Kai Er, Mo Tian, and Charkis were the first 4 to reawaken. The 4 great Saint Masters' eyes flew open and a brilliant light could be seen in them. I've actually reached the pinnacle of a great Saint Master. There is just one more step needed for me to become an Earth Saint Master. The look of shock on Kai Er's face could hardly be repressed as he spoke with excitement. I too have gone from a middle great Saint Master to a peak great Saint Master. Qing Feng spoke passionately. After drinking a drop of the 100-grass wine, the 4 of them had all reached the very peak stage of a great Saint Master. From there, it was only a short step away from becoming an Earth Saint Master. Chapter 547. Imparting a battle skill. After the 4 of them had woken up, several of the flame mercenaries awoke as well. Sensing that their strengths had improved by a substantial amount, expressions of joy filled their faces. These men were originally Middle Saint Masters or High Saint Masters. Now, practically a dozen of them had broken through to become a Great Saint Master after they finished off the 100-grass wine. A candle's worth of time later, the last few dozen people finally woke up. When they felt how much their strength had increased, they were so happy that they couldn't help but let out cries of joy. Everyone in the Flame Mercenaries was ecstatic by this point. Every single great saint had become a Saint Master. Not a single one was below a Saint Master in strength, and even the ones who were originally Middle Saint Masters had become Great Saint Masters. The men who were low Great Saint Masters were now High Great Saint Masters. Not even 2 hours into the meeting and the strength of the entire Flame Mercenaries had skipped several steps. Even if Jian Chen wasn't here, their new strength would be more than enough to rule a small city like Wake City. Even the city lord would not be able to gather an equivalent amount of strength. 8,000 thanks for the captain's charity. The mercenaries all bowed down with a grand shout. Each one of them was especially happy. Jian Chen smiled. Although you've all grown stronger, your battle strength still needs to be trained, so you can become accustomed to your new strength. I will give you all 100 purple coins each. Go and purchase the necessities to live in the wilderness. Tomorrow morning, we will head to the magical Beast Mountain range and train. You will only be able to return if you can kill 3 Class 4 magical beasts by yourself without help. Kai Er, Mo Tian, Qing Feng, and Charkis, you 4 will form a group and follow them. You will listen to my requests as well before you 4 may leave. Jian Chen's words made every single mercenary grow serious. To fight a magical beast on par with them was a very tall order to fulfill. It would normally take about 2 or 3 men to kill a magical beast of their strength because their fortitude, muscles, and build outclassed a human. Only the strongest of men would be able to go head-to-head with them, and very few would be able to prevail against one. When Jianchen decreed that they all had to kill 3 of them by themselves, they felt that this would be a mission that they would never be able to accomplish or come back alive. Captain, as of now, killing a single Class 4 magical beast is hard enough, but for us to kill 3 of them, isn't that too much to ask? Charkis asked. Jianchen shook his head. It isn't difficult at all. As a saint, I hunted Class 2 magical beasts. As a great saint, I hunted Class 3 magical beasts. Then as a saint master, I fought Class 4 magical beasts. If I can do it, then everyone will be able to do the same. This trip to the mountain range is a training trip to increase your battle strength. Remember that when you gain the strength to fight enemies of your own level, then your battle experience, skill, and speed will increase dramatically. Those 3 points are most critical, so remember them when you go. Pausing for a moment, Jianchen stared seriously at everyone. I still have something to give to everyone when we arrive at the magical beast mountain range. It'll lend a hand in improving your strength. Do you all understand now? Jianchen fished out a bag of purple coins from his space ring and began to give everyone 100 purple coins to buy equipment with. Although it wouldn't need such a large sum for such things, these mercenaries still had families they needed to provide for. While Jianchen had handed them all a very serious and worrisome mission, the mercenaries couldn't help but smile when they saw the shimmering glint of the 100 purple coins. A single purple coin was worth 100 gold coins. A few purple coins was more than enough for an entire family to live half a generation of luxury. Therefore, a sum like this was more than enough to spend on an entire lifetime. After receiving the sum of money, each of the mercenaries departed from the Kai family's courtyards with happy faces. They were headed to the nearby markets. Kai Qingfeng, Emotion, Charkis, come with me. Jianchen called for the 4 to follow him to his own personal room. Kai and the others followed close behind until they got to his room. As soon as they arrived, Jianchen placed a single tattered but simple book on top of the table. Handing the books over to the 4, Jianchen explained, there is a total of 8 battle skills in here, 6 human-tier battle skills and 2 earth-tier battle skills. You may take this and learn from it. Kai and the other 3 began to shake at the mention of battle skill. The book in front of them made their blood boil in excitement, and Jianchen's explanation brought them such shock that their bodies nearly began to spasm. Charkis' face was completely red as he spoke with a quavering voice. Captains, is this true? Are these really 6 human-tier battle skills and 2 earth-tier battle skills? And you're really giving them to us? A battle skill was an extremely precious treasure on the continent. It was far more valuable than cultivation methods, and even thousands and thousands of gold wouldn't be able to buy one. Even the lowest tier of human-tier battle skills was extremely pricey, so that any mercenary would hardly be able to afford one. Only the strongest individuals or the most influential ones would be able to obtain such battle skills. Earth-tier battle skills were even more priceless, especially to Earth Saint Masters. Only a small portion of them possessed an Earth-tier battle skill, but Jianchen had given them a present that contained 2. This was a windfall that made the 4 of them wild with joy. Laughing at how excited they were, Jianchen smiled. It is as you say. You are the senior figures of the Flame Mercenaries. With all the years of suffering you 4 have undergone for the sake of the development of the Flame Mercenaries, I, Jianchen, will definitely do my best to train you 4 in thanks for your loyalty. These 8 battle skills are yours to learn. Pass them on to the rest of the mercenaries after you're done. Those who are not yet Great Saint Masters are only permitted to learn the human-tier battle skills. The earth-tier battle skills are not something they are capable of learning yet. The Great Saint Masters are free to learn them if they wish. Captain, for all your efforts in helping to train us, we will make sure that we won't disappoint you. For the rest of our lives, we will follow you anywhere, to death even with unflinching loyalty. Kai and the other 3 gratefully bowed. Smiling at the 4, Jianchen had them rise back to their feet. Work hard, you 4. I will not treat any one of my brothers unfairly. When you become Earth Saint Masters, then I will impart a heaven-tier battle skill to you. Again, the four of them began to tremble violently as they became slack-jawed. The words, "Heaven-tier battle skill," were even louder than a clap of thunder to their ears and could make anyone lose their train of thought in a second. For a while, they remained blank before finally returning to awareness. In their eyes, a heaven-tier battle skill was a paramount of a treasure. Very few Heaven Saint Masters possessed them, and not a single one of the Heaven Saint Masters in the Blue Wind Kingdom possessed such a battle skill. With Jianchen suddenly telling them that they would receive a heaven-tier battle skill when even the Heaven Saint Masters of the Blue Wind Kingdom did not own one, they could hardly believe their ears. A very long time later, Charcus was the first to snap back to awareness. Shocked, he looked to Jianchen and asked, "Captain, do you really have a heaven-tier battle skill?" Smiling and nodding, Jianchen replied, "Correct. I have a heaven-tier battle skill and not just one either." By now, Jianchen did not need to hide the fact that he possessed heaven-tier battle skills. With his strength, he was more than strong enough to protect them from Heaven Saint Masters at the very least. Not a single person would dare to try to start trouble with him. Charcus continued to stare blankly at Jianchen with his mouth wide open. The entirety of what he heard just now was far too unbelievable. Just then, Jianchen looked away for a moment with a smile. "An acquaintance has stopped by. Let us go greet him." Walking out of the room, Jianchen was followed by Kai Er and the others with wooden expressions. They were clearly still processing what they had heard back in the room. Walking into the courtyards, Jianchen saw the rather regal-looking city lord Yunli smiling and chatting with Ming Dong. The moment Jianchen stepped into the courtyard, Yunli had discovered him from the corner of his eyes. Immediately smiling to welcome him, Yunli said, "Brother Jianchen, you finally returned. I heard you participated in the gathering of the mercenaries 2 years ago. I felt quite concerned for a good while, afraid that my dear brother Jianchen would come into danger. But seeing you now, I can see that my concerns were unfounded. How young and promising you are, and how powerful. Even if it's danger, you are able to turn it into fortune. Seeing how healthy and impressive you are, I can only assume that you've made quite the achievement for yourself in the gathering of the mercenaries." Cupping his hands, Jianchen smiled. "The city lord certainly has been worried. The gathering of the mercenaries has given me a new lease on life. With good fortune, I was able to survive and prosper." Chapter 548. To the ruler of the city ruler Yunli was very shocked to hear what Jianchen said. Originally, he had thought that Jianchen didn't even make it to Mercenary City. Very few great Saint Masters were likely to survive to join the gathering of the mercenaries. Not only did Jianchen say he had participated, he survived. What a fortunate kid! Yunli thought to himself, but the emotions on his face did not betray his thoughts as he continued to smile. "Ah, that is only proof of your strength. If you were able to make the journey to Mercenary City, then you must have benefited greatly from the experience." There was indeed bountiful experience gained, but it's not worth mentioning. Jianchen courteously replied. As Yunli continued to chat happily with Jianchen, his eyes began to observe Kai Er and the other three every so often. According to his senses, he was more than capable enough to see the massive transformation the four of them had undergone. Startled, he thought to himself, "Peak Great Saint Masters. They're that strong? But how? They were barely middle Great Saint Masters before Jianchen came back. What prompted this sudden breakthrough? How did they become as strong as me so quickly?" He tried not to think about Kai Er and the other three. Instead, he tried to talk to Jianchen about more important topics before leaving in a hurry. After Yunli left, Qing Feng sneered. "That Yunli is an unsavory character. He helped the Defiance mercenaries grow in secret before. Does he think we don't know that?" That's right, at the time of the collapse of the Alliance, the one-armed warrior had just arrived in Wake City with some of his followers. If it weren't for Yunli helping them, the one-armed warrior wouldn't have so easily gained strength. Charcus spoke venomously with clear signs of hostility between him and Yunli. Jianchen's eyes flashed with an icy light for a moment as he listened. Without another word more, he turned to Kai Er. "Let us go to the Door clan." The Door clan once possessed some name to it in Wake City as one of the major's power before. When their previous head of the family Weiss left the world, the Dor family was left with his son as the acting head. When they left the Flame Mercenaries, their power in the city had taken a huge loss in strength and authority since Weiss had been their only great Saint Master. Riding the Class 3 magical beast mounts, Jian Chen and the 6 others arrived in front of the gates where the Dor family resided. The 4 mercenaries had led the way. The Dor family no longer displayed the same glorious splendor they had in the past. The ancient-looking doors were closed shut and leaves were scattered everywhere. Even guards weren't seen anywhere, making the area look rather desolate and abandoned. A moment after Kai Er knocked upon the ancient-looking doors, they began to open to reveal a white-haired elder. Clearly recognizing Kai Er, the elder immediately gave a smile and greeted him. "So it was you, Lord Kai Er. Come in please." Hurriedly opening the door, the elder began to welcome him inside. "Hurry up and call out Weiji. Tell him the captain of the Flame Mercenaries has returned." The captain of the Flame Mercenaries. Stunned, the elder looked at the men riding the magical beasts outside the doors and snapped back to awareness. "Yes. I will go retrieve the Lord." Having said that, the elders stumbled back into the interior of the compound. Pushing open the doors the rest of the way, Kai Er said to Jian Chen, "Captain, please come in." Dismounting from his mount, Jian Chen strolled into the compound. At that moment, the newly informed Weiji came hurrying on over along with 2 females. The acting head of the Dor clan, Weiji, was also the only son of Weiss. Weiji pays his respects to the captain. Weiji was no stranger to Jian Chen and immediately bowed to him. This one pays her respects to the captain. The middle-aged woman followed Weiji's example and bowed down to Jian Chen with panic. Only the child that looked several years old continued to stare at Jian Chen with wide-open eyes. Jian Chen's gaze softened as he looked at Weiji. Smiling, he said, "Weiji, this must be your wife and child." "Yes, Captain. This is my wife and child." Weiji was nervous in his response to Jian Chen. When his father had passed away from battle, he had taken the initiative to leave the Flame Mercenaries. Now that the captain had returned and had personally come to visit, Weiji was more than nervous and afraid that Jian Chen came to condemn them. Amicably, Jian Chen smiled at Weiji. "Weiji, please relax. I came here today for a social visit only. No matter what is said, your Dor family was once members of the Flame Mercenaries. Your father died for our Flame Mercenaries. His services and achievements will never be forgotten to us." Weiji could only sigh in relief having heard those words. At the mention of his deceased father, his eyes began to tear up. "Weiji, when I wasn't here in the past, the Flame Mercenaries suffered greatly. Now that I've returned, the Flame Mercenaries will not stop its development. Will you be willing to rejoin the Flame Mercenaries? The achievements your father worked hard to achieve for us will be remembered by me as if you had done the same. I will do my best to help make you grow stronger." Jian Chen continued. Weiji hesitated for a moment. Looking at his wife and child, he shook his head. "Captain, I truly wish to apologize, but this one has no ambitions for greatness or power. I only wish to protect the remaining pieces of stability and giving peace to my family instead of spending me time around the continent. I have no desire to throw away my life for a struggle that could claim it at any moment." Jian Chen let out a sigh. "That is fine too. If you wish to live in peace and stability, then I won't force you out of it. Your father dedicated his entire being to my mercenary group and even sacrificed his life for it. Even with his departure, I will remember his achievements and reward you for them in his place." Jian Chen retrieved several space belts he had prepared beforehand from his space ring and handed them over to Weiji. "Inside these are a few coins and monster cores. In place of your father, I will give them to you. Take them, and I hope that in the future I can count on your assistance once more." Misty-eyed and emotionally affected, Weiji's hand trembled as it accepted the space belts handed to him by Jian Chen. When he had learned that the captain had returned, Weiji feared that he would be tortured by the group and had been nervous as a result. It had been beyond his wildest dreams that Jian Chen did not blame him or rebuke him, and had instead handed him a present of money and monster cores. "Ma? Many thanks to the captain for his charity, Weiji exclaimed. Smiling, Jianchen replied, although your father has left, it should be my responsibility to look after his offspring. In the case that your Dor clan comes across any trouble, then seek out the flame mercenaries. On that note, I will bid you farewell from here. With that said, Jianchen turned around to leave, and got on his Class 3 magical beast mount. Traveling on top of his mount in no hurry, Jianchen felt the snowy white tiger cub still sleeping in content against his chest as it digested the resources in its body. Jianchen slowly rubbed the furry head of the tiger cub sleeping against his chest. With the large amount of heavenly resources the tiger cub had been fed, the cub had grown exponentially stronger, and had already reached the same level as a Class 4 magical beast. Ming Dong, Kai Er, and the others followed Jianchen from behind. They had learned of the tiger cub Jianchen had a long time ago, but everyone had thought that Jianchen was merely raising it to be a cute pet. Therefore, they paid it no attention. Kai Er, you received a Class 5 magical beast cub. Just who in the world stole it? Jianchen suddenly asked. Kai Er hesitated for a moment, prompting Qin Feng to speak up for him. We had many of our men fan out and search the city, but we never found any clues of who might have committed such an act. The same evening the cub was stolen, we had our men watch the city gates. If any person had been seen carrying a cub out of the city, we would have been notified. Even several days later, not a single piece of information was reported to us. No news of the one responsible was reported, so we all figured that the Class 5 magical beast cub had already been snuck out of the city, escaping into any possible direction. The Golden Tiger King's cub carries an unforgettable story with our flame mercenaries. Jianchen sighed as he thought back to the past and what had transpired back then. Chapter 549. Culprit of Stealing Away the Cub. 1. Jianchen's face grew progressively darker and more malicious as he whirled into a different direction. He then led the group toward the city lord's mansion. The group was confused by Jianchen's sudden transformation. None of them were able to tell just what could happen to make Jianchen act as such. Despite their befuddlement, the look on Jianchen's face was enough to make them silent and follow from behind. The mansion of the city lord was located at the center of Wake City, so Jianchen rode his magical beast mount through the streets to his destination, much to the curious but envious eyes of every spectator around. In the small city that was Wake City, a Class 3 magical beast mount was an extremely rare sight to behold and could hardly be seen at all. 7 of them appearing at once was a very eye-catching sight for every person on the streets. It called for many mercenaries to begin to talk to themselves. Look at those youths riding on top of the magical beast mounts, and look at their rich-looking clothes. These men have to be the young children of some sort of powerful family. Look how pretty that female in the middle is. She's practically a fairy. I swear on my wretched life that she has to be the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I can barely even breath. Aren't those 4 the heads of the flame mercenaries standing right behind them? Strange, why do they look like they're servants for that group? I've heard that the captain of the flame mercenaries came back out of the blue last night. Could the men on top of the magical beast mounts be related to the captain? I've heard that the captain is very strong, especially at his age. Wouldn't that person leading the front up there be him? I think I heard someone say earlier today that the one-armed warrior of the Defiance mercenaries was crippled by the captain. All of the remaining experts of the Defiance mercenaries were killed and the group was dissolved. I wonder if that rumor is true. As Jianchen and his group traversed the streets, everyone turned to look and chatter among themselves about this phenomenon in front of them. However, Jianchen turned a deaf ear to their words and didn't bother to pay attention to them at all. Soon, the group arrived at the city lord's mansion where Kai Er immediately strode forward to negotiate with the guards at the gates. The captain of the flame mercenaries has come to pay a visit. Please notify the city lord. The flame mercenaries were very well known throughout Wake City, so when the guard heard that the captain had come to pay a visit, he didn't dare to neglect his duties. He immediately went off to report to the city lord. When Yunli had received news that Jianchen was here, he immediately threw whatever item he had down and went out to receive him. After several words of greeting, Jianchen and Yunli both walked into the greater halls. Brother Jianchen, I didn't think that you would come to the mansion in person. What an honor it is to receive you in my home. Yunli laughed with happiness. The dark expression on Jianchen's face was nowhere to be seen since his arrival. Smiling in reply, he said, when you visit a temple, you visit with a reason. Here I am today with the hope that the city lord will be able to help me with something. Brother Jianchen, you are far too polite. Whatever it is you need assistance with, I will do my best to assist. There is no need for this politeness. Yunli laughed. Pausing for a moment, Jianchen replied, City Lord, my flame mercenaries were once in possession of a Class 5 magical beast cub before, but it was unfortunately stolen from a thief one night. Not only did he kill a senior figure of my group, the flame mercenaries had spent a tremendous amount of time and energy to find the culprit to no avail. This one hopes that the city lord will help assist our flame mercenaries to bring this assassin to light. That'll be no problem at all. Rest assured, Brother Jianchen. I will dispatch my men straight away to search the city to help find this assailant to bring them to justice. Yunli waved his hand without hesitation to help coordinate with Jianchen. Then I'll be troubling you with this task. Jianchen cupped his hands with a smile. Yunli laughed. It'll be no trouble. It's a small matter to me. Brother Jianchen, I am 20 or so years older than you. If you don't mind, please just think of me as your brother. In the future, should you ever have any need for this older brother, please allow me to help you. Kai Er, Qingfeng, Emotion, and Charkis snorted to themselves in secret as they gave disdainful glares at Yunli behind Jianchen's back. They didn't know what level of strength Jianchen was now, but if Jianchen was capable of being able to give out a heaven-tier battle skill, then his strength definitely couldn't be belittled. Seated at such a high level of power, a small city ruler like Yunli was in a completely different field of influence than Jianchen. City Lord, let us talk about that after we find the culprit responsible. With that assailant being the one responsible for killing a senior figure of the flame mercenaries, I swear on my name of Jianchen that I won't let them go unpunished. Right now I only wish to dedicate myself to finding that man. Jianchen's words were tantamount to a refusal of what Yunli had asked. Yunli had remained unruffled despite the refusal Jianchen handed out. If Brother Jianchen wishes to find that assailant, then your older brother will naturally help you. As long as it is within Wake City, there is nothing your older brother cannot resolve. He smiled. Waving for several of his soldiers, Yunli commanded them with a serious expression, go and notify Commander Duoli. Have him lead a detachment of troops through the city and check the experts hidden throughout the city. This servant will do as instructed. The soldier replied before retreating. One moment. Jianchen suddenly called out. City Lord, there is no need for such an inconvenient way of searching for the culprit. That unknown expert has most likely changed his face so we wouldn't know what to look for. However, there is a definite method to find them. The Class 5 magical beast cub is still with them, so we just need to focus our efforts on finding the cub. This way our goal will be much easier. That's right, absolutely right. Yunli completely agreed. As expected from the intelligent Jianchen. What quick-witted thinking! This way, our troubles will be lessened. After stealing a Class 5 magical beast, there would be no way that the culprit would let it escape his control so easily. As long as we find the Class 5 magical beast cub, then we will find the culprit with it. It is as the City Lord says. As long as we find the cub, we will find the assailant that dared strike at my flame mercenaries and kill a senior figure. Furthermore, the City Lord's information network is quite effective. Would you happen to have information of what happened with the cub in the few days after it was stolen from my flame mercenaries? Jianchen's eyes attentively stared down Yunli as he questioned. Yunli's expression remained unchanged. Letting out a sigh, he replied, Brother Jianchen, you overestimate your older brother's spy network. It isn't able to delve too deeply into anything, and for something like the Class 5 magical beast cub, this older brother knows nothing about it. Perhaps the thief has already left Wake City? Left Wake City, is that true? Jianchen muttered with a glint of ice flashing through his eyes. Everyone with me. Without informing Yunli, Jianchen began to leave the halls. Yunli's face faltered slightly after seeing the retreating back of Jianchen. Quickly recovering, he chased after him with cordial urging, "Brother Jianchen, why leave so soon? Come and sit for a while. Your older brother will have some of my men prepare a feast to welcome your victorious return from Mercenary City." "Who said I was leaving? I only wish to turn around. Lord Yunli, if you don't mind, please accompany us." Jianchen spoke, but this time, his voice was considerably more frigid than before. Then allow your older brother to be your guide around here. The flower garden is this way, why not take a seat there? Yunli began to pull Jianchen's arm in the direction of the flower garden. Jianchen shook his arm to force away Yunli's palm. "Who said I wished to go to the flower garden? Lord Yunli, you should follow us quietly." Jianchen didn't even spare him a glance as he spoke to him with an even colder tone. He walked to the second story of the building. Troubled by the sudden change in the tone of Jianchen's words, Yunli was further shocked to realize just where Jianchen was walking. Hurriedly running after him, Yunli said, "Brother Jianchen, that is my resting room. Why are you going there?" This time, Jianchen did not pay attention to Yunli. Yunli had originally wanted to stop Jianchen from walking into his personal chamber, but how could Jianchen be stopped by someone like him? The smile that had been on Yunli's face had finally disappeared now that he was exasperated with Jianchen's actions. Staring hard at Jianchen, he said with a low voice, "Jianchen, just what are you doing? Explain your actions." "You'll find out in a moment." Jianchen laughed. They had by now reached his resting rooms. Jianchen then kicked down the door to walk in. Blanching, Yunli immediately strode forward to stop Jianchen. "Jianchen, what is the meaning of this? This is the home of the city lord. For what reason could you have to act as you please here?" A cold sneer appeared on Jianchen's face as he stretched out his arm. With a single swipe, the energy of the world quickly gathered in his palm and slammed into the ground before Yunli could react. A single explosion could be heard as the entire building creaked from the boom. Dust flew into the air and obstructed everyone's vision. Following a gust of wind that blew away the dust in the air, everyone could see the entire room without trouble. In the ground at the center of the room, there was a pitch-dark hole leading down. Seeing this entrance, Yunli's face seemed to be stricken with fear, and his body went slack. Jianchen's icy stare made its way to Yunli before snorting, "Kai Er, Qing Feng, Charcus, Motion. You four go in." "Yes." The four replied before leaping into the cellar below. Several moments later, the four reappeared from the hole with extremely serious expressions. In Qingfeng's hand was a cubic meter cage where a little cub with golden fur, not even half a meter long, could be seen. From within its cage, the cub's eyes roamed timidly over everyone while it cowered in a corner. Chapter 550, Culprit of Stealing the Young Cub, 2. Yunli's face became extremely white at the sight. Now that things had gotten to where they were, he knew that there was no longer any possible way he could get out of this situation. Even the most perfect lie would be unable to trick them, and Jianchen was no idiot. Kai Er and the other three's faces were thunderous as they furiously glared at Yunli. In their eyes, their rage could not be hidden. "So, the mysterious assailant that snuck into our flame mercenaries to steal away the cub and kill Duo Kong was you. I never would have imagined that the man we had desperately searched for all this time would be you." Motion snarled as he glared at Yunli as if he was a bloodthirsty animal that wanted nothing more than to skin his scalp, devour his flesh, and drink his blood. Practically lifeless where he stood, Yunli found no words to say. Although he wanted to avoid this subject entirely, Yunli couldn't find the words to quibble to avoid trouble, especially when he thought about the words he had spoken to Jianchen earlier before the Class 5 magical beast cub came back to bite him. Jianchen had been right to say that the culprit would be with the cub. As long as the cub was found, then the culprit would be found as well. "I never would have imagined that it would be you who stole the Class 5 magical beast cub, Yunli. To think that you were the one that killed Duo Kong. How stupid we were. We should have realized it was you earlier." Throughout Wake City, The person most likely to have a battle skill while also being the biggest unknown to us would be the ruler of the city. How repulsive, how utterly repulsive. We never suspected it was you from the very beginning. Kair was furious as well. His face filled with a furious murderous intent. Qingfeng looked to Jianchen and said to him with indignation, "Captain, now that Duokang's killer has been found, we cannot let him go. Duokang would never rest in peace if we did. We cannot let his death go unavenged." Qingfeng's words had caused a fluctuation in Yunli's face and a light had begun to twinkle in his eyes. Nodding, Jianchen stared straight at Yunli. "Yunli, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Knowing in his heart that there was no way to spin things in a way to justify himself, Yunli had decided to hide nothing from them. "Correct. The one who infiltrated your flame mercenaries that night was me. The one who stole the Class 5 magical beast cub was also me, and Duokang died by my hands as well. But no matter the case, I, Yunli, am the Lord of Wake City and an official of the Blue Wind Kingdom. Should you harm an official of the Blue Wind Kingdom, then you will be challenging the authority of the kingdom as enemies. The kingdom as a whole will not sit idly by the side should you harm me." Yunli's words made Jianchen's eyes twinkle with an icy light, and a sneer appeared on the edge of his lips. Kai Er and the others narrowed their eyes with concern. The Blue Wind Kingdom was a huge beast they had no chance of provoking, so the words of Yunli had frightened them. "You value the Blue Wind Kingdom far too much to use them to hide behind in front of me. How ridiculous you are." Jianchen laughed with a disdainful expression. Yunli started at that. He had thought that Jianchen would be at least intimidated by the very mention of the Blue Wind Kingdom. The way Jianchen saw as nothing more than an insect made him feel like there was absolutely nothing he could do to help himself now. "Jianchen, does your flame mercenaries truly desire to become enemies with the Blue Wind Kingdom?" Yunli sternly barked. Despite his voice, his heart felt uneasy when Yunli thought about the fuzzy details of Jianchen's background. Jianchen was truly a mysterious individual in his eyes. At the very least, he knew that Jianchen was the captain of the Flame Mercenaries, but he lacked every other piece of information about him. Seeing the skill and the atmosphere Jianchen carried with him, Yunli had no doubts that Jianchen was not some sort of savage or uncultured villager. "The Blue Wind Kingdom? They have no right to stand as an enemy to me. Kai Er, tie up our esteemed lord and escort him out." Jianchen commanded. "Yes." Hearing their captain utterly reject the Blue Wind Kingdom as something not worth noticing, the four of them stomached their fear and hurried to capture Yunli per Jianchen's orders. "I'd like to see you try. I am a lord and bureaucrat of the Blue Wind Kingdom." Yunli exploded with rage. Unafraid of the group in front of him, his hand took out his sword in preparation to do battle. "Capture him," Jianchen commanded. Without hesitation, the group took out their own saint weapons and began to charge at Yunli. A strange light appeared in Yunli's eyes. Not running up to fight with Kai Er and the others, his sword flew back to strike the wall, creating a hole. Leaping out of it, he opened his mouth to cry out, "Assassins! The Flame Mercenaries are rebelling. Soldiers, come eliminate them." Yunli's voice was so great that not only did the soldiers within the mansion hear him, even the soldiers stationed out on the streets could hear his command loud and clear. Every single soldier from within the mansion immediately mobilized into action. Even the ones outside began to pile in from the streets to join in. Those bystanders outside felt stunned by what they had heard. They immediately began to talk among each other. "Did I hear that right? Are the Flame Mercenaries rebelling?" The Flame Mercenaries are the strongest group of mercenaries within Wake City. What reason do they have for a rebellion? I heard that the captain came back last night. Has he gone errant in the head? In the magical beast invasion 2 years ago, the captain of the Flame Mercenaries was one of the greatest contributors to the city. Why would he rebel? Yunli's words had caused a tremendous explosion of conversations in the streets. No matter if it was a civilian, merchant, or mercenary that heard him, none of them could understand him. Within a span of several seconds, over 300 soldiers were jam-packed around the area so tightly that even water couldn't escape. Under the protection of several soldiers, Yunli could be seen coldly smiling at Jianqin. Even after being surrounded by these 300 men, Jianqin and the other had remained unmoved. Their expression were calm, especially those of Ming Dong, Du Gufeng, Yun Zheng, and Senior. When they saw the soldiers, they seemed as if they were staring at nothing itself. My esteemed lord, it goes without saying that you are childish. Do you really think this small amount of soldiers will be able to force us into submission? Ming Dong mockingly snorted at Yunli. I do. How could they not? Don't forget that I have the 100,000 soldiers of Wake City under my command. Rebels you lot are, rebels I say. From today henceforth, the Blue Wind Kingdom will shelter your flame mercenaries no more. Yunli knew that there was no way Jianchen would forgive him, so he had thrown caution to the wind as he committed to this final gambit in the form of the 100,000 soldiers he had. Killing the soldiers in charge of defending the city was different than killing a civilian or even a merchant. This was tantamount to an act of war against the Blue Wind Kingdom itself and would warrant further punishment. According to his own thoughts, if the flame mercenaries were captured and tried for a sin as grave as rebellion and conspiracy, even the figures behind the mercenaries would be useless. Conspiracy and intent to rebel? My esteemed lord, do you take our heads for hats? Ming Dong merrily laughed. Do you think this would scare us? A group of insurgents that remains unchanging even when death is at hand. Soldiers, kill them all. Yunli barked out a decisive order. Without hesitation, the 300 soldiers charged straight at the group in front of them. Laughing, Ming Dong's body immediately flashed away as an azure light that flew through the crowd and toward Yunli. Before Yunli could even react, both of Ming Dong's palms had flown out several times to send the soldiers near Yunli flying, and with another stretch of his right hand, Ming Dong clasped onto Yunli's throat. Ming Dong had been so fast that Yunli couldn't even see what had just transpired. A choking sensation swelled up within Yunli's throat as terror flooded his senses once he realized that his throat was held tightly by the enemy. At the same time, Yun Zheng, Senior, and Du Gufeng let their saint force wrap their palms before they shot, with a wave of energy, at the surrounding soldiers, sending some flying. Plenty of them were knocked so hard that blood flew out from their mouths from the damage they received. As Earth Saint Masters, there was no need to waste so much energy on these soldiers who were far weaker than them. Completely terror-stricken, Yunli could hardly believe his eyes. There was no way he would have imagined that Ming Dong would possess such a tremendous amount of power. Brothers, I've captured the Lord. What shall we do with him, kill or cripple? Ming Dong asked Jianchen. Yunli's face paled when he heard Ming Dong, but because of the tight hold on his throat, he couldn't even say anything in response. There's no need to deal with him that quickly. Tie him up and carry him out. Jianchen replied. Fine, but let's take some precautions. Let's rough him up a bit to make sure he loses his will to fight. With that, Ming Dong slapped his palm into Yunli's chest. Pa! A mouthful of blood immediately sprayed out of Yunli's mouth after having been injured by Ming Dong. Shortly afterward, Kai Er and the others had found some iron chains to tie up Yunli. His arms were chained behind his back with the chains looping around his neck. Then, under the eyes of all the soldiers there, Yunli, the lord and ruler of Wake City, was taken from the mansion without obstruction. The flame mercenaries have gone rogue and captured the lord. Go, notify Commander Duo Li immediately. One of the soldiers cried out for another to go run for the commander. Kai Er and the others kept a close watch on the injured Yunli as they followed Jianchen from the mansion. The cage with the Class 5 magical beast cub had remained with them. Right behind the group, all of the soldiers followed with anxious looks. They had originally planned on blocking Jianchen from leaving, but when they thought about how terrifying Du Gufeng and the others were, their fear caused their hearts to tremble, overriding their courage to fight. Chapter 551. Citywide commotion. Jianchen, Ming Dong, and the others continued to travel on top of their Class 3 magical beast mounts back to the Kai family's compound as if nothing had happened. Right behind them, Kai Er and the other three pushed and prodded the trussed-up Yunli. Now that Yunli had been heavily injured by Ming Dong and had been tied up in chains, his body was in an extremely weak state. Combined with the fact that the four men around him were as strong as him and the terrifying figures of Ming Dong and Jianchen in front of him, Yunli didn't bother to waste any time with trying to break free from his bonds. He knew that it would be impossible to escape. Jianchen and the group continued to walk through the streets of Wake City with the Lord held captive. On the way, everyone turned to gawk with disbelieving eyes. None of them ever would have thought that the flame mercenaries would actually do something like hold the Lord of Wake City captive in chains. The flame mercenaries are conspiring against the Blue Wind Kingdom. They have plans to rebel and turn traitor against the kingdom. Do not let them walk free. Take up your weapons and kill the flame mercenaries, and you will all be rewarded for your services. Although Yunli was chained up, he was more than willing to speak and try to worsen the crimes of Jianchen, hoping that he could give them all even more trouble. The eyes of the bystanders nearby the flame mercenaries changed in intensity after hearing Yunli's words. Shortly after they passed, everyone began to talk among with each other, but none of them were stupid. They simply wouldn't believe that the flame mercenaries would rebel against the Blue Wind Kingdom on the words of the Lord alone. Combined with the strength of the mercenaries within Wake City, no one dared step into their path to stop them. Staring disdainfully at Yunli behind him, Jianchen prodded, "Lord Yunli, I respected you 2 years ago, and thought you to be an honest and upright person. I never would have thought that your true self, hidden deep within, would be so crass, committing the acts of stealing the cub from my flame mercenaries and killing a senior figure after being exposed. Your avarice has made me quite mistaken in my judgment." Care stuff his mouth. "Jianchen, you belligerent savage. I am an official of the Blue Wind Kingdom. How can you treat me this way? You are challenging the authority of the Blue Wind Kingdom itself. We will never let you lead dash." At this point, Kai Er stuffed a piece of cloth into his mouth. Jianchen's words had stunned everyone who heard him. "I've heard that the flame mercenaries obtained a Class 5 magical beast before it was taken by a thief in the middle of the night. I never would have imagined that it was Lord Yunli that stole the beast and killed one of their leaders. Look, isn't the monster in that cage the Class 5 magical beast cub? So, the beast was stolen by Lord Yunli after all. The fact that the flame mercenaries had so many of their men looking for the one who stole it caused a huge uproar back then. The last I heard was that not even a single clue was found, but if it was the Lord that stole it, it's no wonder no trace was found. This is most likely some crock and bull story from the flame mercenaries. The truth of this matter needs to be investigated." The streets were buzzing with conversation as everyone began to share their perspectives. Some believed that Jianchen was telling the truth. Yunli had stolen the cub and killed a senior figure of the mercenaries. Others believed that Jianchen was making use of an excuse to frame and trap the Lord. However, no matter what was said, not a single person moved to stop them. The Defiance mercenaries had long since left Wake City, and after their departure, everyone knew that the Flame mercenaries were back as the strongest mercenary group with no equal. On the Tianyuan continent, power was the most important matter for everything. Everything could be solved through power. Things like reason and logic only existed when both sides were equal in strength. By the time Jianchen returned to the Kai family compound, news that Yunli had been captured by them had spread like wildfire through the city. Practically everyone and everything had heard of it in some form. Like a giant bomb that had gone off, everyone was extremely surprised to hear this news. Wake City was a third-class city at most, but Yunli was still its ruler and an official of the kingdom as a whole. If the Flame mercenaries were so brazen to capture and imprison Yunli, then they were directly challenging the authority of the Blue Wind Kingdom, making them an enemy. For the sake of their own honor and prestige, there was no way the Blue Wind Kingdom would ignore this matter. Back within the inner courtyards of the Kai family, Yunli was forced to kneel in front of a pillar where the memorial tablet of Duo Kong stood. Outside, plenty of strong-looking men had flowed in one after another. While procuring their equipment for their mission, the men of the Flame mercenaries had heard about what had happened and dropped everything to return back to the compound. When they heard that it was Yunli that had stolen the Class 5 magical beast cub and killed Duo Kong, their eyes were filled with hatred beyond belief. Just then, a large concentration of footsteps could be heard outside. Following that, a single guard came running in to report, "Captain, A large group of the city soldiers have gathered. Jianchen lazily waved a hand. Not to worry, open the doors, let them in. Hence, the gates to the Kai family compound were opened wide. A group of armored soldiers could be seen marching toward them in a denomination of over 1,000. The sounds of their footsteps soon came to a stop, and everyone was keenly aware that they had the entire Kai family compound surrounded. A single soldier came forward with a small detachment of soldiers following him in. This was Commander Duo Li, staring at the kneeling Yun Li with hardened eyes. Duo Li turned to look at Jianchen. Jianchen, what is the meaning of this? Why are you treating the lord of the city in such a manner? Emotionlessly, Jianchen replied, Yun Li stole the Class 5 magical beast cub from my flame mercenaries and then killed the senior figure Duo Kong. His crimes cannot be forgiven. Yun Li spat out the cloth that had been stuffed in his mouth and mustered all the justice he could. Duo Li, don't listen to Jianchen's bull. The flame mercenaries are planning to rebel against the kingdom. Their greed knows no bounds. They have decided to frame me for their schemes. Seeing how honest Yun Li had looked, Duo Li had no idea whether he was being lied to or not. You still dare to quibble? Kai Er snorted and kicked Yun Li. Duo Li thought for a moment before replying. Jianchen, when Wake City had been under siege by a magical beast invasion, your contributions were widely respected by me, but to treat the lord of the city in such a manner is not acceptable. Release the lord, and I will at the very least make the report to the higher-ups for justice for the death of one of your own. Jianchen shook his head. There is no need for such troubles. There is no injustice or hatred I have with Yun Li. For what reason would I have to put false charges on him? Even if I did hate him, I would not put such a despicable crime on him if it were false. I have made my decision that he is the assailant without question. Yun Li will be punished in accordance to our flame mercenaries. Duo Li's face grew dark as he cupped his hands to Jianchen. Jianchen, although I respect you greatly, the ruler of the city cannot be disgraced in such a manner. If this is how you will continue, then please forgive this one for my offense. Duo Li waved his hand and commanded, Everyone, rescue the lord. At his command, every single soldier charged into the courtyards. Even the soldiers surrounding the place had flown over the walls to charge at Jianchen's group in huge numbers. With a hearty laugh, Ming Dong held out his azure-colored sword. He said, Good timing, let me show you the might of my earth-tier battle skill, Cloud-Destroying Cyclone. A strong burst of wind attributed Saint Force began to flood from Ming Dong before transforming into a tremendous cyclone that seemed to ascend into the sky where the clouds roamed. Soon, the cyclone spun around so fast that the clouds began to dissipate. With such a tremendous cyclone appearing in the courtyards, the surrounding walls of the courtyards began to violently shake. Even the soldiers charging at Jianchen were nearly sucked into it. Unable to keep their balance, it took everything they could to remain attached to the ground. However, the cyclone did nothing to affect Jianchen's group. Seeing the dreadful cyclone appear from nowhere, Duo Li's face blanched as he cried out, Earth-tier battle skill. You're an Earth Saint Master. Laughing, Ming Dong gave a violent shake of his sword. The cyclone began to expand even quicker now. It forced the winds to blow even stronger so that the soldiers were pulled into the air without any way of protecting themselves. At this sight, Duo Li couldn't maintain his stoic expression anymore. This was the very first time he had seen an Earth-tier battle skill. Doing his best to retreat several steps without flying away, Duo Li commanded, Everyone, retreat. Retreat now. Seeing the tornado consume several soldiers, all of the surrounding soldiers who had not yet took part in the charge began to retreat before Duo Li even gave his command. As they tried to flee from the cyclone, their eyes reflected their fear. If they were to be sucked into this cyclone and sent hundreds of meters into the air, chances were that they would die from hitting the ground too hard. Even Yun Li, who was still kneeling on the ground, turned completely white when he saw the cyclone that reached into the sky. With a rather disheartened murmur, he said, In Earth-tier battle skill, he has one of those. Chapter 552, Men from Tianlong City, a tremendous cyclone speared through the sky into the clouds before turning the sky into a surging sea of clouds for all of Wake City to see. The furious waves of wind let out a wailing screech that kicked up dust everywhere within the proximity of the city. Dust covered the sky and sun, forming a dusky sight. A heaven-tier battle skill was strong enough to cause the sky to whirl and transform with its might. Although an earth-tier battle skill was far weaker than a heaven-tier battle skill, Ming Dong's strength as a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master was strong enough to create such a sight. In front of the eyes of everyone, all of Wake City was treated to a once-in-a-lifetime event. The gigantic cyclone was noticeable throughout Wake City and caused another big stir among the populace. Many of them were startled by the sudden sight and displayed panicked expressions. Many of them were curious, but far more of them were terrified. Everyone look at how many soldiers are being sent flying by that cyclone. Fearfully, one of the more sharp-eyed men cried out at the sight above of them. Whipping their heads up to stare in rapt attention, everyone noticed that sure enough, plenty of soldiers could be seen whirling about the cyclone without falling back to the ground. If I'm not mistaken, those are the soldiers in charge of our city's defenses. What is going on? Why did this cyclone appear, and why is it not moving at all? It's a battle skill for sure. Dear heavens, this has to be a battle skill, and a high-leveled one at that. I heard that when some of the more advanced battle skills are used, they can shake the heavens themselves. Look at this scene, it's similar to what the rumors say. It has to be an Earth-tier battle skill at the very least, or one of those legendary Heaven-tier battle skills. Since when did our Wake City have one of those? That's the area where the Flame Mercenaries entrenched themselves. I heard that they just brought the Lord of the City as captive there a small while ago. Now the experts of both sides have to be fighting, but I never expected a battle skill to be used. It has to be a strong battle then, we should take a look. A battle like this is once in a lifetime, it'd be a shame to miss this. Quick, let's take a look. A fight between experts is rare to come by, we can't miss this. The streets were filled with people as they quickly flew through them headed to the location where the cyclone was originating from. Mercenaries and civilians alike were trying the most to catch sight of a fight that would undoubtedly be unforgettable. In the courtyards, Commander Duo Li and his soldiers were retreating as far as they could with their faces overwhelmed with shock at the cyclone in front of them. Kai Er, Qing Feng, Charkis, and Emo Tian were stunned by Ming Dong's technique. They felt a newfound appreciation for him in their hearts. Even in their eyes, their adoration could hardly be concealed. Half a moment later, Duo Li let out a mouthful of air to try and calm himself, but he could not help but think that in 2 years' worth of time since the captain of the Flame Mercenaries left, he was able to pull in an Earth Saint Master. With one of those overseeing the group, there would be no faction capable of going against them in Wake City. It would appear that with my strength alone, I will not be able to rescue the Lord. Hesitating, Duo Li yelled in a large voice, Jian Chen, if there is still room to negotiate, this one hopes you will show some mercy and forgive this simple soldier. Ming Dong, cease your hand and don't endanger the lives of these soldiers. Jian Chen commanded Ming Dong. Ming Dong nodded and slowly began to revoke his Earth-tier battle skill. With Jian Chen's control over the wind elements of the world, he began to slowly ease the flying soldiers back down to the ground. Despite Ming Dong intentionally making his cyclone weak enough to not kill any soldier, they were all still extremely light-headed and blurry-eyed. Commander Duo Li, take your men and leave. The matters with Yun Li have no business with you. If you fail to listen, I won't be as merciless as I was just now. Jian Chen stated. Duo Li's face grew serious when he heard Jian Chen's words, but he said nothing as he cupped his hands together to leave with his soldiers. He now knew that the Flame Mercenaries had an Earth Saint Master with an Earth-tier battle skill, making them far stronger than what any regular Earth Saint Master could accomplish. Thus, Wake City had no way of dealing with the Flame Mercenaries. With faces ashen from dust and dejection, Duo Li and his soldiers left the courtyards to return to the Lord's mansion. As soon as Duo Li entered his own room, he immediately set his brush to paper and began to write. Finally rolling up his message into a scroll, he attached it to the leg of a lightning bird and set it free. As it soared through the air, the lightning bird gave a flap of its silver-white wings and transformed into a bolt of lightning that quickly disappeared into the horizon. The Kai family's compound had become a mess with part of the walls partly collapsed because of the cyclone. Plenty of the mercenaries, merchants, and civilians who had gathered around stood a decent distance away, fearful of taking another step closer. The Lord of Wake City was still kneeling on the ground with the memorial tablet of Duo Kong in front of him. Isn't that the Lord Yunli tied up to the pillar? To think that the flame mercenaries would treat the Lord of a city in such a manner. A mercenary group kidnapping the Lord of a city? What a huge story! But this goes to show how strong the flame mercenaries are if even the government of the city is helpless to do anything. Wouldn't the actions of the flame mercenaries mean that they're unafraid of the Blue Wind Kingdom? Although they are strong, they cannot go head-to-head against the entire kingdom. Perhaps the flame mercenaries have an even stronger support that doesn't fear the Blue Wind Kingdom. The crowd outside the Kai family's compound grew larger and larger as news of what happened spread throughout the city. Soon enough, the Kai family and the flame mercenaries grew more and more famous in Wake City. For a mercenary group to kidnap a city lord, this was a huge story for the Blue Wind Kingdom. Kai Air will be putting the trip to the magical Beast Mountain range on hold for now. Guard Yun Li and make sure he stays in front of Duo Kang's memorial table to grieve for 7 days. After 7 days are over, execute him. Do not let anyone near him in the meanwhile. Jian Chen ordered. Yes, Captain. Everyone replied with respect. With Jian Chen being willing to execute Yun Li for his murder of Duo Kong, everyone within the Flame Mercenaries felt moved. Jian Chen won their love and respect once more. For hours later, in a first-class city called Tianlong City, the lord of the city was reading book when a guard came running in with a letter in his hands. Handing it over, the guard retreated. Taking the letter and opening it, the lord of Tianlong City began to read. As he read, his face grew darker and darker before slamming the table and standing up in anger. Ridiculous! How utterly absurd this is! A tiny mercenary group has imprisoned the lord of a city? Where is their common sense? It is truly ridiculous. Call out Cat Ada, Katafiai, and Yun Long to me. Soon enough, Cat Ada, Katafiai, and Yun Long arrived in the study room. Each one of them looked to be around 40 years old in age. Cupping his hands together, Cat Ada spoke. My lord, for you to call us brothers together in such a hurry, what seems to be the matter? It is a ridiculous tale. A small mercenary group has kidnapped the lord of a city. They are taking the officials of the Blue Wind Kingdom to be gnats in their eyes. The 3 of you will lead a detachment to Wake City with due haste. The lord spoke with a grim expression. Having a group of mercenaries kidnap and tie up a city lord was utterly intolerable. Yes, my lord. All 3 of them replied before setting off. Within the Kai family compound, Jian Qin and Ming Dong had already retired to their rooms to rest. They handed over the rest of the matters to Kai Air and the others to deal with. Jian Qin, Yun Li is still a city lord. Are you really going to kill him? This is the Blue Wind Kingdom, not the Jessen Kingdom. Tai Ta asked in concern. Although he knew Jian Chen was a heaven saint master, becoming an enemy of the entire Blue Wind Kingdom was something that was very deadly in the eyes of Tai Ta. With his own strength, there was no way he would be able to defend himself. Jian Chen chuckled. Tai Ta, what I'm doing is well within what is acceptable. The Blue Wind Kingdom is nothing to fear. You just need to focus on if we ever lose our path of development. Tai Ta, you need some courage in you. Feel free to watch from the side. Look at us. See how none of us are concerned, so why should you be? You only just started your travels on the Tianyuan continent. There's still plenty for you to learn. Ming Dong added. Seeing how relaxed everyone was, Tai Ta couldn't help but feel slightly less worried. Oh, fine then. I'll follow you without a word. The next day outside of Wake City, a single group of armored soldiers could be seen flying down the roads at high speeds on their magical beast mounts. After being welcomed in by Duo Li and his soldiers, the group began to talk to one another. After the negotiations were over, the detachment of soldiers immediately moved into Wake City and headed toward the home of the Kai family. Almost a cup of tea's worth of time later, Kai Er came walking into Jian Chen's room with a grim expression. "Captain, men from Tianlong City have arrived." "I know. You may leave." Jian Chen's voice could be heard from inside. Chapter 553, Meeting an Acquaintance Once More. "Yes, Captain." Kai Er responded before retreating back into the courtyard. The sight of a large group of soldiers could be seen through the broken-down parts of the wall as they slowly neared the compound. Kai Er, Qing Feng, Mo Tian, and Charkis all stood by the gates with the flame mercenaries standing behind them in silent solitude. Each one of them had a grim expression, but there was no worry to be seen. Not too far away, the disheveled and haggard face of Yun Li had noticed the arrival of the reinforcements from the Blue Wind Kingdom. With eyes that reflected his joy, Yun Li had already begun to think of himself as good as rescued. However, with the cloth still stuck in his mouth, he could not talk, otherwise he would have long since let out a loud yell. The 500 soldiers from Tianlong City came to a stop near the Kai family's courtyard while 3 middle-aged men came forward. These 3 men were Cat Ada, Katafi, and Yun Long, who had been ordered by the Lord of Tianlong City to go help. Seeing the tied-up figure of Yun Li, Yun Long's eyes flickered with a furious glint. How absurd is this group of mercenaries? To treat the lord of a city in such a manner is unforgivable. Cat Ada sighed. "I did not think that the mercenary group that captured the city lord would in fact be the flame mercenaries. That makes this situation quite difficult." Looking to Yun Long, Cat Ada said, "Brother Yun Long, let us wait a little longer before we reach a conclusion. 2 years ago, I happened to meet the captain of the flame mercenaries and learned a little about him. He is not as simple as one might think he is. Please allow Katafi and I to handle this and ask what has caused this situation to happen. The Captain Jianqin is not an impulsive and reckless person. If he treats the city lord in such a manner, there is surely a reason for it." "Fine, I'll leave it to you. I hope that the captain is as you say he is." Yun Long spoke apathetically. With a smile, Cat Ada leaped off his magical beast mount and strode into the courtyards. Smiling to everyone, he said, "If I might bother everyone, please inform your Captain Jianchen that Cat Ada has come to pay a visit." Cat Ada did not reveal an angry expression at all, but rather a kindly one as he smiled at everyone. "Huh, it's been 2 years since we last met, Cat Ada. You haven't changed a bit." Just as Kai Er was about to respond, a single voice could be heard from behind him as the white-robed Jianqin came out of his room. Right behind him were Ming Dong, Du Gufeng, Senior, and Yun Zheng, Tai Ta, and Yu Yu in close succession. Recognizing Jianqin, Cat Ada smiled and cupped his hands in greeting. "Yes, I haven't changed at all, but on the other hand, Jianqin, you've changed quite a bit. I barely recognized you just now." As he spoke, Katada's eyes swept over the men behind Jianqin. Although he couldn't tell the actual level of strength of Jianqin, Ming Dong, Du Gufeng, Senior, or Yun Zheng, they all looked to be as powerful as himself. When Cat Ada saw those 4, his eyes wavered with confusion. Cat Ada had no way of confirming just what cycle Ming Dong and the others were at in the Earth Saint Master realm, but he could distinctly tell that they were of the same level of strength as him, Earth Saint Masters. At this result, Cat Ada was extremely shocked. 2 years ago, the flame mercenaries weren't nearly strong enough for him to take note of. Aside from Jianqin, there were no other noticeable figures. However, within a mere 2 years, 4 Earth Saint Masters had appeared out of nowhere. That was news of shocking proportions. "Haha, Captain Jianqin, these 4 brothers must be your friends." Cat Ada laughed. Knowing that Cat Ada was trying to discern the relationship between the 4 men behind him and himself, Jianqin smiled. "They are members of my flame mercenaries." Cat Ada could only grumble to himself in silent pain. If the flame mercenaries had 4 Earth Saint Masters, then his strength had been curbed here. He had originally thought that this would be a simple task, but now that the opposing side possessed such a large strength, Cat Ada felt that he and the others wouldn't be enough for this task. Cat Ada showed no emotion on his face other than a faint smile. "Captain Jianqin, I did not expect the flame mercenaries to grow so much in 2 years. I am truly impressed. Jianchen returned the smile, having no desire to skirt around the issue with Cat Ada. He said, Cat Ada, you must have come to Wake City for the purpose of saving Yunli, I assume. Seeing that Jianchen had taken the initiative to speak, Cat Ada minced no words either. Thinking for a moment, he nodded his head. You are correct. We came here to Wake City on behalf of the city lord all the way from Tianlong City. Katada's face grew stern as he continued to speak to Jianchen. Jianchen, I don't know what issue was started between you and the lord of Wake City, but your treatment of a city lord has made the lord of Tianlong City startled. Some time ago, my flame mercenaries managed to obtain a Class 5 magical beast, but a mysterious assailant snuck in and stole it one night. That assailant also killed a senior figure of my flame mercenaries, unfortunately. This mysterious assailant was found out to be the city lord, Yunli. Jianchen stated calmly. Cat Ada was silent for a moment before saying, Jianchen, even if what you say is true, he is still the lord of Wake City and an official of the Blue Wind Kingdom. You cannot treat him in such a manner. Even if there is a crime, you should have let the Blue Wind Kingdom deal with him. Why not release him for now? Jianchen shook his head without hesitation. Cat Ada, I know that you come from Yunli, but I have made my decision and no one will be able to change my mind. It would be best for you to return. Jianchen, have you thought about the consequences of your actions if you do this? Cat Ada spoke. What consequences? I care not for them. I, however, am resolute on executing him. Jianchen replied. Seeing how Jianchen was still unperturbed about the matter, Cat Ada let out a sigh in his mind. This expression of Jianchen meant that there would be no point in trying to waste words and energy to convince him. Yun Long strode forward at this moment. Flame mercenaries, release the city lord immediately. If not, then you won't like the future consequences in store. Yun Long did not bother to negotiate with Jianchen nor be as gentle as Cat Ada was. Although he knew that there were 4 Earth Saint Masters here, he did not have any fear for them at all. With the Tianlong City supporting and championing him as a representative of the Blue Wind Kingdom, people as trifling as a mercenary group was thus far beneath his notice. Yun Long's words had caused Jianchen to knit his eyebrows together in irritation. Smiling coldly, Jianchen said, What was that? It looks like I'll just have to see if my flame mercenaries will be able to handle these consequences then. Yun Long snorted, If you wish to die, then don't blame me. Allow me to experience the might of your flame mercenaries. With that, Yun Long materialized a bright silver sword in his hand as he sent a beam of white light toward Jianchen. He then transformed into a blurry shadow that shot toward Jianchen as well. Seeing the white light, Jianchen was slightly surprised. So he is an Earth Saint Master with Radiant Saint Force. But what good is your Radiant Saint Force? Allow me to see what you got. After Jianchen spoke, Ming Dong piped up and transformed into a bright ray of azure light that zoomed toward Yun Long. Bang! When the milky white light of the Radiant Saint Force came into contact with the azure light of the Wind Saint Force, an explosive boom could be heard as ripples of energy surged out like water into the surrounding area. The marbled ground began to fracture once more into a series of spiderweb-like cracks. A single strike later, Ming Dong could be seen standing without a change in expression. On the other hand, Yun Long had been sent staggering back several feet with shock and disbelief on his face as he stared at Ming Dong. You've reached the 6th cycle of being an Earth Saint Master. Yun Long cried out in disbelief. His words caused Cat Ada and Katafii to feel shocked as well. A 6th cycle Earth Saint Master was a paramount existence for all Earth Saint Masters. All they needed was a single step to become a Heaven Saint Master. Such an individual like this was strong enough to be able to fight Cat Ada, Katafii, and Yun Long to a standstill without a problem. A 6th cycle Earth Saint Master? I'm impossible. Yun Long was dumbfounded. Compared to a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master, a 2nd cycle Earth Saint Master was completely insignificant. Laughing, Ming Dong replied, And yet you tried to say that our flame mercenaries would be unable to handle the consequences with your strength. How haughty and arrogant of you. Yunlong's face turned pale white to pale green in an unchanging flow of color. Earlier, he had underestimated the flame mercenaries. He never would have entertained the thought that the flame mercenaries would actually have a sixth cycle Earth Saint Master. Chapter 554. Exit. Standing awkwardly in the courtyard, Yunlong and Cat Ada were now stuck in a rather difficult situation. The strength of the flame mercenaries had been beyond their expectations. If they were to use force now, then their side would be hurt the most. At the same time, if they were to retreat, it would be quite shameful and would serve as a slap to their faces. With a calm voice, Jianchen turned to speak to Cat Ada. Cat Ada, you should turn back. This matter with Lord Yunli is something you should not interfere with. My flame mercenaries will make no compromises on this matter. Jianchen was not at all close with Cat Ada. However, since they had once fought shoulder to shoulder 2 years ago during the beast invasion wave in Wake City, Jianchen did not wish to make things too difficult for him, so he had spoke with a softer voice. Cat Ada sighed and gave a complicated stare to Jianchen. Very well then. Jianchen, if you are so determined to choose this path, then you leave us with no choice. We'll leave this for today. With that, Cat Ada pulled the still ashen-faced Yunlong away. They got onto their magical beast mounts, and lead the group of 500 soldiers back to Tianlong City. Still kneeling on the ground, Yun Li's face was despondent and his eyes reflected his despair as he watched Cat Ada and the other two ride away. Cat Ada, Katafiai, and Yun Long had led 500 soldiers from Tianlong City to Wake City in order to suppress the flame mercenaries. In the end, it was the flame mercenaries that had done the suppressing. The mercenaries had forced the group away without achieving their goals. News of this spread across Wake City like fire and caused many of the civilians to begin to re-evaluate the flame mercenaries. Without rest, the group from Tianlong City rushed back on their mounts straight to the city lord's mansion in order to report what had happened. Their story of what happened in Wake City was recounted for the lord to hear. The important parts, such as there being 4 Earth Saint Masters with one of them being a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master in the flame mercenaries, were particularly stressed. The lord of Tianlong City grew grim after hearing that. 4 Earth Saint Masters with one at the pinnacle was an extremely important matter that even the lord had to regard with all due importance. How strange that there is such an unknown mercenary group with such a powerful amount of strength. Were you able to find out the background of these people or what power supports them? The lord asked with concern. The three shook their heads before Cat Ada said, My lord, my brother and I once met the captain of the flame mercenaries 2 years ago. At that time, he was only a great Saint Master, but even then, his fighting strength was simply enough to astound the both of us. When Wake City was in a crisis with the magical beast wave, 3 Class 5 magical beasts came. Shockingly, the 3 of them were completely killed by the captain. And one of the Class 5 magical beast was the green-scaled ape. Katada's words were so shocking that even the lord was unable to stop himself from bolting straight up from his chair. Shocked, he questioned, What was that? The captain of the flame mercenaries was able to kill 3 Class 5 magical beasts as a great Saint Master? Are you sure this is true? Are you lying to me? It is completely true. My brother and I were there to witness it. My lord, the captain of the flame mercenaries isn't a simple person. He cannot be belittled. Even now, he somehow managed to find and bring 4 Earth Saint Masters into his mercenary group. This is already enough to paint him as a very unique person. Cat Ada replied in a serious manner. Thinking back to how Jianchen had killed those 3 Class 5 magical beasts, Cat Ada felt some lingering surprise reappear. Since when did such a genius of this aptitude appear within our Blue Wind Kingdom? How strong is the captain of the flame mercenaries now? The lord asked with a grim expression. I know not. I wasn't even able to see his strength. Cat Ada replied. The eyes of the lord slid to the other 2 individuals. Were either of you 2 able to see his strength? Yun Long and Katafiai shook their heads. The lord's eyebrows furrowed together as he hummed in thought. He most presumably used some sort of way to hide his strength. From what I gather from you, the captain is a rather mysterious character. I'd like to meet this person and see just what type of person this captain really is. Very well, you may leave first. This should bear no matter with you anymore. A week passed by in Wake City. During these 7 days, nothing out of the ordinary that happened after Cat Ada, Katafi and Yun Long had visited. Therefore, Jian Chen and his group had lived for a period of peace. The prestige of the Flame Mercenaries had constantly grown throughout Wake City by the words that came from the mouths of the civilians. Practically everyone within 1,000 miles knew about the Flame Mercenaries, which helped give rise to their reputation in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Within the courtyards of the Kai family, a half-meter-tall scaffold could be seen. The haggard and disheveled figure of Yun Li could be seen kneeling over the scaffold. Beside him was a strong-looking man with a huge blade towering over him. Today was the day Yun Li's execution. The entirety of the Flame Mercenaries had gathered here, and even more curious passers-by were standing around to point at Yun Li and gossip. Yun Li displayed a face that was sallow and despondent. His eyes were completely devoid of life, and his hair was so disheveled that he looked more like a beggar than his known image as the high and lofty lord of a city. His saint weapon had long since been destroyed by Jian Chen personally, but his life had been kept intact. As of now, he had already degenerated to a cripple that could not fight. All of the precious saint force he had spent years cultivating had been ruined without a chance of returning, and now even escape was impossible. Ladies and gentlemen, today I, Kai Er, will declare the sins that Yun Li is guilty of. Kai Er began to recount the tales of Yun Li's crimes with the Flame Mercenaries for everyone to hear once more. Everyone had already heard the story in clear detail, so Kai Er was merely just saying this as a formality without trying to invoke the reactions of the audience. Having finished speaking Yun Li's crimes, Kai Er knew that the time was nigh. He said in a loud voice, "And now is the time. Let the blade fall." At his order, the man holding the cleaver brought his hands straight up into the air. In front of the thousands of eyes of Wake City, he slashed off the head of Yun Li with a splurt of blood flying from his detached neck. As if offering a sacrifice, the blood of Yun Li splattered on the memorial tablet of Duo Kong. With Yun Li's death, Duo Kang's revenge had been absolved as well. However, there was still a feeling of mourning in everyone's hearts. No one was happy. Even though Duo Kang's revenge had been fulfilled, Duo Kong would never return to them. Thus, they would never see him again. Yun Li's death had given rise to talk throughout Wake City for only a moment before dying back down. Although Wake City was now without a lord, the business and everyday life was completely unaffected. It continued as usual. Commander Duo Li was now in charge, and had rarely been seen in the city. Ever since Cat Ada and the others left Wake City, he knew in his heart that even Tianlong City was mindful of the Flame Mercenaries. Hence, he had never bothered to ask about the matters regarding the Flame Mercenaries. The day after, the members of the Flame Mercenaries followed Kai Er and the other 3 into the magical Beast Mountain range as per Jian Chen's instructions. Everyone left the Kai family's compound, and only a few servants and artisans were left behind to hurriedly repair the place. Jian Chen had sent Yun Zheng and Senior in with the Flame Mercenaries to protect them while they were training in the magical Beast Mountain range. In the case that someone's life was in danger, they would intervene. These men were after all the most loyal of mercenaries, and Jian Chen had no wish to see them come into any danger during their training. With the strength of the Flame Mercenaries revealed, if some Earth Saint Master came to fight with them, Yun Zheng and Senior in would be enough to fight them off or buy time for Jian Chen to arrive. While the Flame Mercenaries were off training in the magical Beast Mountain range, Jian Chen and the others left Wake City as well on top of their Class 3 magical beast mounts. The dark-skinned but straightforward Tai Ta sat on top of his newly confiscated mount. Weighing on his mind was the events of yesterday's execution of the Lord Yun Li. Having only just begun his journey on the Tianyuan continent, Tai Ta had never yet experienced the rules of survival that the Tianyuan continent followed. Although he had killed plenty of magical beasts, this was the very first time he'd seen a person die. Yesterday's sight remained a heavy shock in his mind to the point where he was still perturbed. Jian Chen understood what Tai Ta was feeling and went to comfort him. Tai Ta, the Tiantuan continent is a world where the weak are the food for the strong. The future will remain like this in almost a daily experience. Wait until you have the strength and you'll learn to adapt. The Tianyuan continent is a cruel place. Tai Ta muttered. Jianchen laughed. Let's go to Fengyang City. You'll learn plenty over there perhaps. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.